participants, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Conference of the Deported Ukrainian Children. I'm very honored to welcome you in this annex building of the Finnish Parliament. And sorry for delay also on our online followers. It was such a positive problem that we are so many. And also we are many people from all around Europe, but also globally represented by many embassies, so many continents. So some of you know that I had a dream already last year to one day organize an international seminar in Helsinki on this topic. Today we bring together parliamentarians, legal experts, human rights defenders, international partners to address one of the gravest consequences of Russia's aggression against Ukraine, the illegal deportation of the Ukrainian children. My name is Mia-Petra Kumpula-Natri, and here as the Vice President of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe and the Chair of the delegation from the Finnish Parliament delegation to Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly. This event is organized by our delegation together with a special network of Ukrainian children, and I'm happy to be Vice Chair, and here I have my Chair Olena Komenko, MP from Ukraine, with me. I'm proud to announce that this conference is organized under the patronage of the First Lady of Finland, Mrs. Susanne Innestup, who is not able to personally attend, but she is showing her support of today's event by according her patronage, and we are very grateful for her of such an honor. The purpose of this event is not only to raise awareness, but to strengthen European cooperation and international activities in returning these children and ensuring justice and reintegration. We have a participation of broad diplomatic courses and some countries, new countries also, and you are also all mostly welcomed. And as I welcome also action taken by so many countries, I hope that after this conference there is concrete action by many more. We will learn, we will exchange ideas, and then I hope we leave with the actions. Dear participants, weaponization of children is not okay. It's a crime, and it's not accepted anywhere. Russia has used that against Ukrainian children, and we gather here to help. Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly also has adopted several resolutions and required action and reached something. I'm sure you will hear more about the special envoy who will come, and a nomination was required by PASE, and then also we have been pushing for juridical actions. You will hear more. So with these welcoming words, I will have an honor now to give the first speech to Mr. Jussi Halla-aho, the Speaker of the Finnish Parliament.
Thank you. Hyvät naiset ja herrat, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, депутати Верховної Ради України, представники посольства України в Хельсинкі, інші українські гості. I will continue in English. Finland, like all Western societies, is increasingly polarized on many questions. In this House, there are deep disagreements between the political parties about public spending, taxation, immigration, climate policies, social security, and many other issues. But when it comes to national security, defense, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine, there is a remarkable and enduring consensus among politicians and the nation as a whole. Partly because of our geographic location, partly owing to our own historical experience, no one needs to explain to us why it is so essential that Russia not be rewarded for its aggression. And we as politicians do not need to explain it to our voters either. From the start of the invasion, Finland has been among the biggest donors of humanitarian, financial and military aid to Ukraine relative to the size of our population and our economy. We are pragmatic people. As President of the Republic, Mr. Stubb has said, we prefer action over big words and declarations. We want our aid to be effective, not symbolic. Prior to the invasion in February 2022, we were more optimistic about Russia than some others. The war came as a huge disappointment, as it showed that Russia has no respect for its own obligations or the basic norms of international law. What happened afterwards, over the past 3 years, has further deepened this disappointment. Russia is engaged in a medieval-type genocidal war of annihilation, not so much against the armed forces of Ukraine, but against the people of Ukraine. Examples of this are the intentional missile and drone strikes against residential buildings, the attempts to freeze people in the winter by destroying energy infrastructure, and the kidnapping of thousands of children from the occupied territories, which is the topic of today's conference. Eduskunta, the Finnish parliament, supports all efforts to bring back the stolen children and to bring to justice those responsible for these barbaric crimes. As Speaker, I bid you welcome and hope the conference will be fruitful. Jak speaker, ja witаю вас do Eduskunty I spodziewаю się, że ця конференція буде успішною. Дякую. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Next one, we will have a video greeting from the European Commission, the Commissioner Michael McGrath. He's in charge of the democracy, justice and rule of law and consumer protection.
Good morning, everyone. The topic of discussion today highlights how war disproportionately targets the most vulnerable in the most devastating ways. Thousands of Ukrainian children have been unlawfully deported or forcibly transferred by Russia. They have been taken from their own homes, their families, their culture, which blatantly violates international law. These heinous acts must not go unanswered. Those responsible will be held accountable. The EU remains fully committed in its efforts to ensure that there will be no impunity for the crimes committed by Russia in and against Ukraine, whether it be through our support to the International Criminal Court or by helping Ukraine to strengthen its criminal justice system so that perpetrators can be tried in Ukraine. Without the return of Ukraine's children and without redress, there can be no justice and no lasting peace. These children are not collateral damage. They are the future of Ukraine. Their return to their homes and families is essential for Ukraine's recovery. The EU joined the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children and fully supports the Bring Back Kids UA initiative of the Office of the President of Ukraine. Adequate and professional care, including psychological support, is crucial for the swift rehabilitation and reintegration of the deported and transferred children into Ukrainian society. EU member states are already actively engaged in this regard, and the EU is a participant of the Council of Europe Consultation Group on the Children of Ukraine. As I discussed with the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the Council of Europe on the situation of children of Ukraine, it is of the utmost importance to keep the topic of the deported Ukrainian children high on the political agenda. We must also cooperate closely with the Ukrainian Coordination Centre for Family Upbringing and Childcare Development, which is working tirelessly to make sure that all Ukrainian children receive the care and support they deserve and grow up in a family environment. Today is a really excellent opportunity to discuss this further, to build on each other's expertise and experience, and to drive action. It is our joint responsibility to give the children a voice and to do everything in our power to reunite them with their families and loved ones. I am convinced that together we can do more to step up and coordinate our efforts for Ukrainian children's safe return to their homes. Thank you.
We thank Commissioner also participating on this way and supporting the effort of this conference. And then the next speaker is the Honourable Minister of Social Security, Sanni Grahn-Laasonen, representing the Finnish government.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we've gathered here today around a very important topic: how to help the over 20,000 children that have been identified as legally taken, stolen by Russia, Belarus and Russian-occupied territories, with fewer than 1,300 returned. I would like to start by stating that Finland condemns Russia's abduction and forced transfer of Ukrainian children. This is not only a humanitarian crisis, it's a grave violation of international law, including the Geneva Conventions and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Children. Many children were taken under the guise of evacuation and humanitarian aid, when then placed in Russian institutions and adopted by Russian families. These actions are classified as war crimes and potentially crimes against humanity and must be prosecuted. Children are often stripped of their Ukrainian identity, denied their language and culture, and sometimes subjected to Russian propaganda or forced military training. The situation is horrible. These acts may amount to cultural genocide aiming to erase Ukrainian identity. The international community, and specifically International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children, must pressure for the safe and immediate return of all abducted children to Ukraine. Support must be provided for Ukrainian efforts like the Bring Kids Back UA initiative. The conference today is a small part of these efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, Finland, as a member of the EU and Council of Europe, supports international resolutions condemning Russia's abduction of Ukrainian children. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe has called on member states to recognize these acts as genocide and war crimes, emphasizing the urgency of returning these children to Ukraine. Approximately 23,000 Ukrainian children have sought refuge in Finland since the onset of the war, including around 600 unaccompanied minors. These children receive support through the Finnish Immigration Service and municipal services, including access to education and mental health care. Finland continues to support Ukraine through humanitarian aid and participation in EU-led initiatives. While not directly involved in the repatriation of abducted children, Finland remains committed to upholding international law and supporting efforts to reunite Ukrainian children with their families and loved ones. It's important to note that Ukraine is fighting not only for its sovereignty, but also for all of Europe and the rules-based world order, which is being threatened today in so many malicious ways. Finland's attention has been focused on how to end Russia's illegal war of aggression in Ukraine. Ukraine wants peace, Europe wants peace, the United States wants peace. We're still waiting to see in clear and concrete terms if Russia also wants peace. And we must say that peace is never easy. The support of the international community will be essential. Support to peace, support to international law, support to the principles of the UN Charter. But finding a way to long and just peace is also our best way of helping the abducted Ukrainian children. Thank you very much for organizing this very important event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Next one will be online speak from Ukraine. I hope the connection is appearing here. So the next speaker will be online address from Mr. Dmitry Lubinets, Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights. The activities of the Commissioner for Human Rights of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine are aimed at the protecting constitutional rights and freedoms of people violated by public authorities, local governments or their officials. Since the beginning of the war, Lubinets is involved in finding whereabouts and return of the Ukrainian children deported by Russian authorities. Do we have a connection to him? Onko sulla puhelinyhteys siihen avustajalle? All right, some connection problems, so we'll be connected after the honorable speaker. Next speaker, Despina Chazvili-Lissou, is the Secretary General of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, and I'm very happy to have her here. So please, Despina.
Thank you, Mia Petra. I hope you can see me behind these beautiful Ukrainian color flowers. Excellencies, distinguished guests, there is an echo problem, I think. I try again. It is a profound honor for me to address you today at this crucial conference on deported Ukrainian children. The Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, the voice of 46 member states around Europe, has been unwavering in its condemnation of the forced transfer and deportation of Ukrainian children by the Russian Federation, as it has been unwavering for denouncing this war of aggression and initiating the expulsion of the Russian Federation from the Council of Europe within a couple of weeks. In our resolution 2482 of 2023, the Assembly clearly qualified these acts as constituting crimes under international law, including war crimes and crimes against humanity. 1 year later, Resolution 2507, the Assembly emphasized the urgent need to identify, locate, and return the children of Ukraine, bring perpetrators to justice, and guarantee that such violations never happen again. I'm just on my way back from Luxembourg, where in the Ministerial Conference of the Council of Europe, the first step to establish a special tribunal for the war of aggression of the Russian Federation against Ukraine has also taken place. So justice is really in the focus of our joint efforts in the Council of Europe. The forcible transfer of children is one of the gravest violations one can imagine, because it strikes at the heart of a child's identity, security, and dignity. It tears them away from their families, their culture, their future. These criminal acts should be punished, and those who are responsible should be held accountable. Let me pay a very warm tribute to the outstanding work of the Parliamentary Network on the situation of the Ukrainian children under the leadership of Mrs. Olena Honeko, Chair, and Vice Chair Mrs. Mia Petra Kumpula-Natri. It was less than a year ago that what was Olena's dream became reality. Since then, Olena's and Mia Petra's tireless commitment, courageous voice, and their constant mobilization of parliamentary support, as this very event today testifies, have been instrumental in keeping the plight of Ukrainian children high on the political agenda of Europe. I would also like to thank warmly Mia Petra, head of the Finnish delegation to the Parliamentary Assembly, for initiating this conference, and my great thanks to the Finnish Parliament for their hospitality and excellent organization. Mr. Speaker, you have amazing people around you. Finland's strong commitment to human rights, democracy, and rule of law shines through today's event. As for the Parliamentary Assembly, we will stand firmly with Ukraine in demanding the immediate return of the children, the accountability of those responsible, and the comprehensive support for their children's rehabilitation and reintegration. Beyond declarations, we are committed to action, mobilizing the international community, strengthening cooperation with Ukrainian authorities, and supporting initiatives like the Bring Kids Back Ukraine program. Is Ms. Lubinet with us? Yes. Maybe? Then it is really my big honor to give him the floor. Mia Petra, may I give him straight the floor? It was his visit to the President's office almost 1.5 years ago that actually drew the attention of the Parliamentary Assembly to this very problem. Let me conclude by reaffirming the Parliamentary Assembly's firm determination. We will not be silent, we will not be relent, we will not rest until every single stolen children is returned, every wrong is righted, and justice is fully served. Thank you.
No. Good morning, dear conference participants. Greetings from Kiev. First of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the First Lady of Finland for organizing such an important event that draws attention to the crime of deportation of Ukrainian children. I sincerely hope that this event will lead to concrete actions to protect their rights and bring our children back home. Russia has been abducting Ukrainian children since 2014. During the period of more than 11 years, thousands of minors have been taken to Russia or forcibly displaced in the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. The Russian Commissioner for Children's Rights stated in one of her reports that the occupiers have taken more than 700,000 Ukrainian children to the aggressor country since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for her and for Russian president for this crime, but this is not enough. The deportation and possible transfer of Ukrainian children continues. Currently, more than 1.5 million children are at risk of abduction in the temporarily occupied territories. Russia has a clear goal: to destroy the identity of Ukrainian children, which is not just a violation of international humanitarian law. The forcible transfer of children from one national group to another is a crime of genocide. The aggressor is acting systematically and consistently in this regard. The first stage is direct deportation to the Russian Federation or forcible transfer of a child within the temporarily occupied territory. The second is changing the child's documents and imposing Russian citizenship. The third is placement of Ukrainian children in Russian families. The fourth is militarization through military patriotic movements such as so-called youth army, which have also been operating since 2014. The fifth, they attempt to change the self-identification of Ukrainian children to Russian. All of this is happening is parallel with hostile propaganda aimed at making children serve in the Russian army in the future. Let me tell you a story. The story of Ukrainian child, Alexander, is a boy deprived of parental care. Since 2016, he has been living in a family-type orphanage in Kherson region, where he and his sister found a new family. But the war crossed his life out. During the occupation, he was taken to Russia alone with other children in the orphanage. The boy was transferred to a so-called new Russian foster family, separated from his sister. Alexander wanted to return back to Ukraine, but his new family prevented him from doing so. His documents were taken from him and he was isolated from the outside world. In the Russian reality, he had no voice, no choice. And then came the terrible news. Alexander committed suicide. His story is not just a tragedy. It is a crime that has a name, deportation. And most importantly, it is another proof that Russia is not just stealing Ukrainian children, it is breaking their lives. As of today, Ukraine has managed to return 1,311 children who were forcibly displaced or deported. They were returned as part of the approved Bring Kids Back UR action plan of the Ukrainian president. NGOs and international partners, in particular the state of Qatar, are involved in the return. There is also the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children, which has already attracted 42 members. And this work is taking place in the face of significant logistical difficulties and Russia's artificial delay of the process, in particular by demanding additional documents. Children and families are also subjected to psychological pressure. Therefore, it is important to put pressure on Russia and bring the perpetrators to justice. A few days ago, almost 40 countries adopted an international declaration in Lviv, Ukraine, on the establishment of a special tribunal to investigate the crime of aggression against Ukraine. This is an important step towards justice, and I believe it will bring the Russian political and military leadership to justice for the crime of aggression. I emphasize that as of today, the Russian Federation has committed over 167,000 crimes of aggression and war crimes in Ukraine. The tragedies in Kryvyi Rih, Sumy, Kiev, where innocent civilians, including children, were killed, are unbreakable and heartbreaking. These kids of horrors, they become a daily reality since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. In order to achieve justice, I call on international partners to strengthen pressure mechanisms, ensure effective justice, and help bring Ukrainian children home, and also to join the search for deported children and obtain personalized information about them. I also call on the national parliaments of the countries to publicly recognize the mass deportation and illegal displacement of Ukrainian children as a war crime and a crime of genocide, both at the level of parliamentary resolutions and through the statements of MPs in the national media. Adopt a sanctions policy against all persons involved in the abduction of children. Investigate Russia's war crimes and ensure accountability, in particular by speeding up the process of establishing a special tribunal. To develop public advocacy, in particular through national parliamentary hearings, inquiries to international institutions, and statements at face meetings. Support rehabilitation and integration projects for returned children, in particular by funding programs in the areas of psychological assistance, educational, and restoration of family ties. Finally, I would like to note the recent adoption of a resolution by the European Parliament in support of the return of Ukrainian children who have been deported or forcibly displaced by Russia. We are sincerely grateful for this decision. I hope that we will see the same concrete steps as a result of this event. Once again, I am sincerely grateful for your attention to this very important topic. Thank you for your support, for your willingness to listen, for your readiness to act. We are fighting together for our future and justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the work and strong words. And so, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, thank you for the Minister. And I also want to raise a good Ambassador of Ukraine, Olga Dibrova, plays here in the first row. You're really taking as a part of the Finnish family with your work. Respect to you. It is time now for me to take the first part to the end. We know that the military, civilian, juridical help to Ukraine, it's very important, all integration towards the EU, and then also the security guarantees. But we here are also looking after every peace plan that doesn't include the repatriation of Ukrainian children. So thank you for this opening part. Now I have the duty to present you some housekeeping information. So please, once again, reminder, this conference is being webcast on the internet page of the Finnish Parliament Eduskunta. The Wi-Fi password can be found at the backside of your badge. Then lunch will be served after the first panel here. It is served outside of this lobby from the buffet. There are some tables reserved in the canteen, but do not use the canteen buffet. That is, then you need to pay yourself. But this buffet we are offering here on this side. And then in the afternoon we have a coffee break here in the same premises. If you need to go outside, please note the smoking is not allowed in the immediate proximity of the building. And also you need to wear your badge if you want to re-enter the building. So those of you with two badges, the white one is reserved for tomorrow and the other one for today. So, ladies and gentlemen, before I give the floor to the first panel, I want to attract your attention to the exhibition, which is outside, called Icons on Ammo Boxes. Kiev-based artists Sonia Atlantova and Alexander Klimenko has done that. It's dedicated to artistic reflections of the Ukrainian-Russian war. Project's general idea is to transform death, symbolized by the ammo box, into life, traditionally represented by icons of Ukrainian culture. The boxes used are as canvases for the icons were sourced from the front lines, making the painting fragments symbolic witnesses to the war of Ukraine. The exhibition of icons painted on ammo boxes from the combat zone has been displayed in 21 countries so far. So let me also quote the exhibition presentation. The Russian aggression against Ukraine has resulted in immense loss of life, widespread destruction, and deep sorrow. Amongst the most vulnerable are mothers and children. Mother holding her child becomes a powerful symbol of innocent suffering and unending grief, embodying the struggles of those who wander, free, and live exile or captivity. The image of the mother with the infant symbolizes not only victory of life over death, but also serves as a powerful image of liberation. Marian icons embody the hope for the future of freedom. So please enjoy the exhibition during the breaks. So now it's my honor to give the floor to Olena Komenko, the chair of the Children Network Group, and the first panel will take place.
Thank you, dear Mayor Petra, and I invite our distinguished speakers of the first panel to join me in the presidium. Катерино. Катерино, на секундочку, можна вас? Знаєте, 10 хвилин? Такі питання, раз, два, три, чотири. Можете, якщо десь закінчити? Сядьте, потім не передасте. не потрібно, можемо прибрати, що дотично можемо залишити. No, it's Mia Petra's. I think it's Mia Petra's. Yeah, she just... Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this crucial first session of our conference titled Illegality of Deportation of Ukrainian Children, Accountability and Restoration of Justice. My name is Olena Komenko. I am a member of the Ukrainian Parliament and chair of the Parliamentary Network for Ukrainian Children of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. The network was established in the Assembly to unite parliamentarians of 46 member states to address the whole range of issues Ukrainian children face due to Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, as indeed no child in Ukraine has been spared by this brutal war. I am honored to chair the network together with dear Mia Petra, and I'm happy to see members of the network here with us today. Thank you all for coming and for supporting the most vulnerable in this war. Russia's mass deportation of Ukrainian children is not only a humanitarian catastrophe, it is a violation of international law and crime that must not go unpunished. In this session, we will explore how legal and political instruments can be mobilized for accountability and how justice can be restored to the children and families affected. I will moderate this panel and would like to ask our distinguished panelists to limit their presentations to 5 minutes. After the presentations, we will open the discussion. I will address questions first to our speakers and then will invite audience to join us in this exchange. Our panel will be started by the presentation of Ms. Pia Kauma, the current president of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, who will now address on the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly commitment to upholding human rights and addressing the grave issues of the deportation of Ukrainian children. Ms. Kauma, it is an honor to have you with us today. The floor is yours. You can stay here, yeah, or to the podium, yeah, up to you.
Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, let me begin by sincerely thanking our hosts for organizing this important event and for placing the issue of the deportation of Ukrainian children at the center of today's discussion. I would also like to thank my fellow panelists for their tireless work and dedication to justice, child protection and the rights of the victims. It is an honor to join all of you here today for this important discussion. The forcible transfer and deportation of Ukrainian children to the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine and Russia remains one of the most disturbing and consequential violations of international and humanitarian law. From the earliest months of the full-scale invasion, the OSCE has worked to document and to expose the extent of these crimes. In the Moscow mechanism reports of April and July 2022 and of May 2023, independent experts brought some clarity to the events. They concluded that these transfers represent serious violations and abuses of international humanitarian and human rights law and may amount to war crimes and crimes against humanity. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, through its annual declarations in Birmingham, Vancouver, and most recently in Bucharest, has also responded with urgency and clarity. We have condemned these actions and expressed grave concern over the forced assimilation of Ukrainian children, the imposition of Russian citizenship, and the attempted extinguishing of their Ukrainian identity. Furthermore, the OSCE Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine, most notably through its Special Rapporteur, Ödebrink from Sweden, has been closely examining this issue. Special Rapporteur Ödebrink, who is with us here today, is gathering critical information on the forced relocation of Ukrainian children and preparing a report which she will present at our upcoming annual session in Porto in Portugal. This ongoing work is an essential step toward justice and accountability. We do understand that close to 20,000 children have been identified as having been deported. Many of them have been placed in so-called filtration camps or forcibly adopted under legal frameworks designed to obscure their origins. This is a strategy not only of physical displacement but of cultural erasure. Every such case is a rupture in a child's life and a violation of their rights. Our Assembly has welcomed the establishment of the International Coalition for the Return of Ukrainian Children and urged all OSCE countries to join this effort. Reuniting children with their families must remain the priority for all of us. The OSCE has also called for a unified international tracking system for unaccompanied or separated minors and child refugees to ensure that these children do not disappear into administrative or legal ambiguity. We have called for the development of child protection mechanisms both within Ukraine and in countries hosting refugees, including social assistance, safeguards against human trafficking, and protection from sexual exploitation and abuse. We must also address the psychological trauma caused by separation, displacement, and identity manipulation. The Assembly has encouraged OSCE countries to support trauma recovery programs to this end. Dear colleagues, we have to seek justice when children have been separated from their families. We must seek their return, and we must seek accountability for their perpetrators. But justice in the face of such a terrible crime seems very, very difficult. While all our efforts should be focused on protecting and reuniting these children with their families at the political level, these crimes demand sustained visibility and principled accountability. The International Criminal Court has taken a step forward, but broader international coordination is still needed. In the interests of accountability, we cannot allow this issue to fade from public view or become entangled in geopolitical fatigue. As parliamentarians, we must continue to raise our voices. We can legislate for action, shape public discourse, and keep pressure on governments and institutions to uphold their commitments under international law. As President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly and Chair of our Parliamentary Support Team for Ukraine, I remain committed to advancing these efforts. The topic will continue to be a focal point of discussions in the OSCE, and we seek to ensure it is also on the agendas of national parliaments. We will continue to make this a priority in public communications, ensuring sustained visibility and engagement. I want to reaffirm my personal commitment and that the Assembly to supporting Ukraine and to standing up for the rights of the children. I call on us all to continue to speak clearly, act collectively, and pursue accountability without hesitation. Dear colleagues, let us match that determination with action. Let us ensure that no child is forgotten, no family abandoned, and no crime left unpunished. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, I was informed that Ms. Kauma has to leave soon, so I would like to ask her a couple of questions, as she will not be able to stay till the end of the session. Ms. Kauma, how can OSCE Parliamentary Assembly members practically support efforts to impose consequences on states, Russia and Belarus, for the deportation of Ukrainian children? And can inter-parliamentary engagement help where traditional diplomacy struggles?
I think that we as parliamentarians can do a lot. Last year, when I was talking about this issue at an event, I heard about, I think it was a Dutch initiative, where they told about the possibility of establishing a DNA mobile data bank, so that those children that have been forcibly deported from Ukraine can also be identified after many years have passed. So I think this kind of initiatives will be needed in our parliaments, and we need to make sure that people in other parliaments also are aware of them, so that we can support each other's initiatives. Because, as you know, if time passes by, it is more and more difficult to locate these children and also to identify them. If they have been deported from Ukraine at a very early age, they probably won't even remember where they were living in the first place. So all these kind of efforts on also from the technical point of view will be needed. And the other issue is, of course, what kind of dialogue we have with the Russians who have done this. And I personally have had a lot of correspondence with the Russian Federation, their representatives in the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, urging that this issue needs to be addressed. But unfortunately, I haven't received any proper feedback from them.
Thank you. And do you see the momentum within European parliaments to adopt harmonized sanctions specifically targeting individuals and institutions involved in deportation of children?
Yes, but we would need to identify who exactly, other than President Putin, is responsible for physically deporting these children. And especially at the border crossings, we have to make sure that these kind of incidents won't take place in the future.
Ukraine has this information, and we can share with our fellow partners, with our with other parliaments, and with our partner states. We can share this information. And the last question: what does the OSCE have to promote consistent and coordinated international action on accountability? What else could parliamentarians do to help gather evidence and build public pressure?
I think especially the parliamentarians who have been in their national parliaments or European Parliament for a long time have good networks in different countries, and I think we need to exploit those networks to the maximum so that we can jointly work together so that we can bring those children back home. And I must also emphasize that since the cooperation, so to speak, with the Russian Federation is so important, it is all the more important that the rest of us will work together in order to get those children back home.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And our next speaker is Mr. Andrew Gardner. acting head of the Human Rights Department of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights, ODIHR. In the Assembly, we are cooperating very closely in the elections observation missions, but today Mr. Gardner will explain us about the involvement of this organization in the protection of the rights of deported children. The floor is yours, Mr. Gardner.
Thank you very much. And at the very beginning, I want to say thank you for this kind invitation to join you in your discussion. So thank you very much to the hosts and all the organizers. In the brief time available, I essentially want to say three things. Briefly, what ODIHR is doing in terms of monitoring violations, including on the issue of the forced deportations of Ukrainian children. Outline how we came about these findings on the deportation of children, the recommendations and calls that we've made as ODIHR, and also outline how our work contributes to accountability for these and other violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights law. So, as ODIHR, we established the Ukraine Monitoring Initiative immediately in February 2002 to monitor and report on the most pressing issues affecting the lives of civilians and prisoners of war. We have monitored and reported on a wide variety of violations, ranging from those related to the conduct of hostilities, arbitrary detention, torture, conflict-related sexual violence, suppression of dissent in the occupied territories, and many of these issues are very interrelated with the issue of the deportation of children, as Commissioner Luminets also mentioned in his presentation. But we've also focused strongly on the issue of the displacement of civilians, or the forced displacement of civilians, and in particular incidents involving the unlawful transfer and also the forcible deportation of children. On this point, ODIHR has been very clear that the forced deportation of civilians is a war crime. Now, what this means, forced deportation, is not that physical force is needed, but there is a coercive environment in which these deportations take place. And what we've spent a lot of our attention on is documenting this coercive environment in our reports. Also, from the first interim report, which we released in July 2022, we included the issue of forced transfers and deportations of children, documenting this through witness testimony. And in fact, ODIHR has and continues to call on the Russian Federation to halt the forcible transfer or deportation of civilians, including children, within Ukrainian territories occupied by the Russian Federation or to the territory of the Russian Federation and Belarus. So very briefly, how do we carry out our monitoring? We use all sources, chiefly interviews, but other sources including open source monitoring techniques. We receive information from parties to the conflict. We meet regularly and exchange information with NGOs, human rights defenders working on the ground. And also it's a two-way thing. We look at ways in which we can assist civil society in their monitoring. I think essential to all accountability efforts and results will be the excellent work done by human rights defenders and monitors from civil society on the ground, and we need to support them in everything that they are doing. I'll very briefly mention some things we're doing in that regard. Very briefly, regarding the interviews, we have conducting 24 monitoring deployments to date with interviews and witnesses. This amounts to 576 interviews, over 600 witnesses. In fact, one of the monitoring deployments was to interview Ukrainians actually in Helsinki. But currently, we are doing all of our interviews in Ukraine. We have done 85 interviews so far in 2025, which will contribute to our next report, which will be published in July of this year. We use a trauma-informed approach, and all the interviews we do are unique. We go to considerable lengths to ensure that people we're interviewing are not people that have been interviewed by other similar actors. Now, we do this both to avoid re-traumatization, but also to avoid duplication. And we have the principle that with the consent of the witness or the survivor, that we will share the testimony with other actors seeking to ensure accountability. More on that a little bit later. And this is a crucial point for this particular subject. We, in line with the trauma-informed approach, we do not interview children as a rule, but we do, of course, interview their parents and other witnesses, and also young adults who've explained to us the experiences that they had as children. And in line with our attempts to make our monitoring collaborative with other actors, including in particular civil society, regarding our trauma-informed approach, we've turned it into an e-learning course, which is available online, free for everyone to use, including in the Ukrainian language, which helps anyone. I mean, we did it primarily for Ukrainian human rights defenders, but actually anyone, state authorities, potentially prosecutors, all state authorities who come into touch with people who have experienced trauma, of how to interview in a way which does not traumatize people, and it keeps them safe. This is a resource which is very well used, in particular in Ukraine. So very briefly, how have we come about these findings? Well, I mentioned, and I think in particular the value added that we have in ODIHR, how our contribution is to accountability is through our witness interviews, our interviews with survivors and witnesses, and in particular, what have we got in terms of witness interviews on the issue of the unlawful transfer and forcible deportation of children. For example, even from the first report, we have several witness testimonies indicating that they left voluntarily, but because of fear for their own or their family's safety, documenting the pervasive violence and abuses by the occupying Russian forces and the dire humanitarian situation, which amounts to a coercive environment and documents the extent to which these deportations were forced. We also have, from our reports, witness accounts of people who are being forcibly transferred, deported, or evacuated from Russian Federation-occupied territories, the perilous conditions which they faced during their journey, including abuses by the Russian armed forces at checkpoints and during so-called filtration procedures. Also, witnesses have recounted being one of many Ukrainians deported to the Russian Federation by train. And these witness accounts are from different occupied Ukrainian provinces. For example, in our third report, 7 witnesses in their testimony referred to children having been taken with the permission of their parents, but by the occupying authorities to camps in occupied Crimea for safety reasons and to enjoy recreational activities, but were then never returned to their home or their parents' care as promised. This amounts to a forced transfer, of course. Also, witnesses stating that the threat of their children being taken to summer camps in occupied Crimea and not returned was the reason enough for them to leave their home and risk traveling, escaping even through Russian Federation territory. Now, these are just examples of concrete testimony which we have, which is, of course, useful for us in our efforts for accountability. We're engaged in human rights monitoring. We're looking at the responsibility of the state. We're, through our recommendations, attempting to put pressure for change of behavior during the conflict at the current time, but also establish the responsibility and the facility for reparations for the victims and survivors. As I said, all the testimonies we've collected are unique. They're not people who've been interviewed by others, so in that sense it's an additional contribution. And as I said, with the consent of the witness or the survivor, we are prepared and have shared this testimony to other actors involved in accountability efforts. You will see in our reports that all the witness testimonies are meticulously referenced. So any, be it prosecutor or any other actor involved in a particular case or investigation on a particular location or particular issue, can get in touch with us directly and ask for a specific details of a specific testimony by number, and this will, providing we have the consent to do so, will be shared. I thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much for your very comprehensive presentation on the work of the OSCE Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights. And we hope for your further involvement in the return and protection the rights of Ukrainian children. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce Ms. Victoria Litvinova, the Deputy Prosecutor General of Ukraine. She coordinates the work of the Prosecutor's Office in the area of protecting the interests of children and combating domestic violence. Please welcome Ms. Victoria Litvinova, who will now share insights into the ongoing efforts of the Office of the Prosecutor General to address the grave issue of child deportations and the pursuit of justice for the affected children and their families.
Dear representatives of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, Parliament of Finland and the Council of Europe, thank you for organizing this important conference and for your unwavering commitment to addressing the deportation of Ukrainian children. It's a pleasure to see Olena Homenko, Chief of the Parliamentary Network on Situations of Children in Ukraine. She is doing an outstanding job of keeping the issue of deported children high on the parliamentary agenda. It's a delight to see here Natalie Raymond, Executive Director of the Yale School of Public Health Humanitarian Research Lab. We are deeply grateful for your profound work, which is always based on facts and solid methodology. Your research is greatly important for strengthening the evidence base collected by Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators. The Prosecutor General Office of Ukraine includes your findings in the material of the prosecutor on war crimes against children. We thank you and would like to encourage other researchers to support our efforts. I would also like to express my sincere gratitude to the member of the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe for adopting 2 landmark resolutions. These resolutions clearly define the nature of these crimes and call on member states to make every effort to locate, return and reintegrate the deported children. They also emphasize the need to ensure that all those responsible at every level are identified and held accountable. As the author of the resolutions rightly state, no child in Ukraine has been spared by the war. At least 7,300 children have been directly affected by Russian military actions since the start of the full-scale invasion. Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators are currently investigating over 4,300 criminal proceedings related to war crimes against children. As of now, Ukrainian courts have sentenced 34 individuals who committed war crimes against children. Among them, 16 people involved in the illegal displacement and deportation of 100 Ukrainian children with special status from the Kherson and Donetsk region. These include 2 deputies of Russia State Duma and the wife of the leader of the Just Russia political party. We also call on other countries to prosecute such crimes in accordance with the principle of universal jurisdiction. As stated in the above-mentioned resolutions, these violations of the fundamental principle of international law amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and have signs of the crime of genocide. Cooperation with international partners remains of paramount importance to us. We regularly exchange information with the International Criminal Court and organizations such as UN Monitoring Mission, UN Independent International Commissions of Inquiry on Ukraine, the OCSE Moscow Mechanism, and others. The impartial documentations plays a vital role in truth and justice. For the identification and return of children, we cooperate with Europol and Eurojust. This cooperation has yielded tangible results. Notably, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin and the Commissioner of Children's Rights, Maria Lvova-Belova. The European Union, United States, Canada, and Ukraine have imposed sanctions on 152 individuals involved in the deportations and illegal transfer of Ukrainian children. The Bring Kids Back platform, initiated by President Volodymyr Zelensky, has united the efforts of Ukrainian government, partner countries, and international organizations. This platform plays a leading role in bringing back and reintegrating Ukrainian children. Ukraine has succeeded in bringing home 1,307 children. We are sincerely grateful to all our international partners whose efforts have made this possible. Yet, thousands of Ukrainian children remain unlawfully held in the Russian Federation, Belarus, and temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. Until each and every child is safely returned home, true peace will remain unattainable. That is why we call on our international partners to increase pressure on Russia to return Ukrainian children, and also to work together to bring all those involved in crimes against children to justice. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Litvinova. Our next speaker is Ms. Katerina Rashevska, a distinguished legal expert at the Regional Center for Human Rights in Ukraine. Since the onset of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, she has been documenting and addressing the forced deportation and political indoctrination of Ukrainian children. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Katerina Rashevska, who will now share her insights and the ongoing efforts to address the forced deportation of Ukrainian children and the path towards peace.
Thank you, dear Elena. Distinguished audience, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathered here today not simply to share our pain, but to find solutions. We are gathered here today to speak the truth, to call the illegality of forcible displacement of Ukrainian children for what it is, a grave crime committed with full intent against the most vulnerable victims of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, our children. Since 2014, and with even greater scale since February 2022, the Russian Federation has launched a great campaign of deporting Ukrainian children. These are not isolated incidents, no mistakes of war. This is a policy, a machinery, a plan. Thousands of orphans were taken from Crimea even before the full-scale invasion and placed to Russian families despite multiple requests by the side of Ukraine to return them to their homeland. Thousands of children were taken from orphanages in Donetsk and Lugansk regions under the pretext of evacuation, rushed out in minutes. Heads of institutions didn't know where they were going. Biological relatives were not told. no legal procedures, no best interest assessments, just silence, and a bus with a Russian military escort waiting outside. By April 2022, more than 2,000 Ukrainian orphans had already been taken to Russia. Russian officials placed them in a federal database of children orphans allowed for adoption. Russian families were encouraged to take them in. And soon, those children were issued Russian passports, new identities, and sometimes even new names. Ukraine was erased from their documents and from their future. This is not an evacuation. It is cynically planned deportation. It is not child protection. This is abduction and assimilation, and it is unlawful. It violates the Geneva Conventions and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, but it also violates the Hague Child Protection Convention and the Rome Statute. It violates the basic principles of humanity. Russia didn't stop. Children from Mariupol, from Volnovakha, from Kherson, from Zaporizhia, from Kharkiv regions were taken too. Some lost their parents to shellings. Others were separated with their family members during the so-called filtration process. Some were told that they were going to recreation camps and never returned. We have proof of Ukrainian children being transferred to 57 regions of the Russian Federation, from Rostov to Vladivostok. We have evidence of their indoctrination and militarization. Russians forced Ukrainian children to wear military uniform and to use real weapons and parachutes, and call this process their rescue. But what kind of rescue takes a child and hides them from the only people who love them? We have seen children placed in temporary care and never brought back. We have heard Russian high-ranking officials told that adoption is just formality because the children have no future in Ukraine. The deportation of Ukrainian children by new Russian parents is ongoing. We are documenting such cases even in early April 2025. Let me be clear, deportation is not only a war crime. It is a crime against humanity, especially regarding the fact that this crime doesn't end after physical displacement of Ukrainian children. What we are facing, it is a clear intent of the Russian agents to guarantee the integration of Ukrainian children inside the Russian nation. This act has a genocidal nature, and we need at least political recognition of this fact by national parliaments. We welcome the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court, but we still wait for the additional qualification of deportation as a crime against humanity. We hope that despite all the challenges to the court's activities, such as sanctions, non-implementation of its decisions even by member states, intention to withdraw, and Putin's desire to bargain for a de facto amnesty under Article 16, we still hope that ICC will continue to prosecute perpetrators of international crimes. We must pursue this accountability not just to punish, but to tell every child still waiting to come home, we see you, we are coming for you. We must support DNA examination and identification of children by any means. The Russians claim that over 700,000 Ukrainian children have crossed their border. Push them to share this information about other minor citizens, if not as a part of the fight against deportation, so in the context of combating human trafficking. We must demand full access for the international independent monitoring missions and organizations to Ukrainian children under Russian control. We must protect every Ukrainian child from being used as a pawn of Russian propaganda and policy. So we should implement more sanctions and coordinate sanction policies to avoid the loopholes. Every day we delay justice, another Ukrainian child learns to call a stranger mother. That is why there is no justice without return of Ukrainian children, and no fair and lasting peace without accountability, truth, and memorialization. Every child stolen is a future stolen, the future not only of Ukraine, but of our shared humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear Katerina. It is my privilege to pass the floor to Ms. Katarina Luckhofer, Head of Sector at the EU Agency for Fundamental Rights. Ms. Luckhofer has been instrumental in leading FRA's initiatives to safeguard fundamental rights across the European Union, focusing on areas such as migration, asylum, and the protection of vulnerable groups. Please welcome Katarina Luckhofer.
Thank you very much for the invitation of the EU Fundamental Rights Agency. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a very big pleasure for us to be here at this conference that focuses on such an important issue. For us as an agency that covers fundamental rights, it is definitely an honor to be here and speak at this event. Let me first start by thanking Council of Europe for the excellent cooperation that we have with them on the return of children. We cooperate especially in the area of return of children from the EU to Ukraine, but we have excellent cooperation where we are trying to contribute to their work in establishing best interests assessment for each and every child that is being returned. Let me also applaud Council of Europe for the efforts that they are putting into the consultation group on children from Ukraine. This is really an honor for us also to participate. The EU Fundamental Rights Agency has been focusing on the rights of the most vulnerable since its start in 2007. And of course, children have been one of the groups it prioritized. What we see as the most vulnerable groups are especially those children as such anyways, but especially those that have been separated from their families. And this is the focus of our discussion today. We have covered this in different products and reports of our work. We have especially focused on the issue of guardianship, but also we have covered the issue of Ukrainian nationals fleeing the Russian war of aggression towards the EU. And there we have, for example, carried out a survey with over 14,000 Ukrainian nationals on how they feel inside the EU, and I will be referring to some of these findings. So what has our work shown? It has shown that Europe must take strong and urgent action to protect children, especially the ones who are most vulnerable, such as those that we cover here. I must clarify that the geographical scope and the mandate of the Fundamental Rights Agency is bound within the territory of the EU member states. However, this scope can be expanded when we talk about those countries that are EU candidate countries in the process applying to become observers of the agency. So, for example, now we have Albania as an observer, and Ukraine is applying to become an observer of Fundamental Rights Agency, and we very much hope that this will materialize very soon, because then we can fully cover Ukraine in the data collection, research, and surveys, not only in the EU member states, but also inside Ukraine. I would like to start by highlighting some of the key principles of international law that we have mentioned here, but just to reflect all the grave violations that are happening nowadays. And maybe let me start by stressing that actually the family is the fundamental unit of society and natural environment for children. Right of the children to family life should be fully protected, and we see this completely violated in the current setting. Preventing family unity and preserving family unity is an essential element of every child protection system. Article 20 of the Child Rights Convention talks about children who are temporarily or permanently deprived of their family and environment, and they are entitled to special protection and assistance. This talks of all the children regarding of their legal status. Appointment of a guardian, of somebody who takes into account the best interests of the child, is a key element to safeguard child protection, and it's a requirement under Article 20 of the Child Rights Convention. The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, in its General Comment number 6, provides also comprehensive guidance on the treatment of unaccompanied and separated children who are outside of their country of origin. And there it says and affirms that family tracing and family reunification, where in the best interests of the child, must be prioritized, as it is an integral part of searching for durable solutions that address all protection needs of children. The UN Child Rights Convention also lays down the key principle of best interests of child. According to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, whenever a decision is to be made that affects a child, individual assessment needs to be made to look at the impact of the decision on the individual child or on children concerned. The principle of best interest of the child is not only a legal obligation, it is also a substantial right, and it is a rule of law issue that we see currently being violated. For the decisions on parental rights, custody, or adoption, the best interests of the child must be the determining factor. And especially when preserving family links and maintaining relations, that must be the focus of the best interests of the child. Let me also highlight another key principle of international law, and that is the foundation of the child protection, and that is the right of the children to be heard. This is embedded both in the Child Rights Convention as well as in the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU. This, of course, needs to ensure that the child receives the information and that the child understands the information. Only then a child can take an informed decision. And this information should be fully comprehensive for the child's age and maturity. Is this happening now? Of course not. And we need to make sure that these children, as we have heard from previous speakers, also receive this information and that they have proper guardianship authorities put in place that can provide such information. Proper information also includes information for filing complaints when they see that guardians are abusing their rights. And this is also a key safeguard that we see that needs to be put in place. So how do we move forward? What we have seen that works at the EU level, but of course is very challenging in the current context, is to have in place cross-border mechanisms for cooperation which help to combat child abduction and trafficking in human beings. This is also embedded in Commission recommendation from 2024. This would also enable the possibility to request information about the whereabouts of the child and about their individual situation. Of course, we understand that this is currently impossible. Second, the appointment of qualified, trained and independent guardians is essential because these are the key protection safeguards for the people, for the children there. But they need to be independent and they need to be impartial. Only in that case they can really serve in the best interests of unaccompanied children, particularly when we are talking about cross-border movements. They need to help, guardians need to help the children to re-establish family contacts and to liaise with their parents or extended family. And third, we have heard it already throughout today, it is very important to ensure psychological and psychosocial support throughout child protection systems. In 2023, FRA carried out a survey of of children and of adults who have fled the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine towards the EU and covered also children. What we have seen are alarming levels of trauma. 3/4 of children who were aged 16 to 17 had experienced missile strikes, threats of missile strikes, bombings. We have also seen that 40% of children who were aged 12 to 15 reported ongoing symptoms of anxiety, depression, and panic attacks, even at the territory of the EU member states, where they probably felt safe. Traumatic experience can have long-lasting impact on mental well-being and health, and support in this area is essential. So let me conclude by saying that response will, of course, need political will. That is essential. However, also coordination and finding alliances among those that support the same goals are a good way forward in this direction. And this conference is one of those. Thank you, and thank you for inviting the Fundamental Rights Agency.
Thank you, Ms. Luckhofer. And now I would like to open an interactive part of our panel, and I would like to ask questions to our distinguished speakers, and then I will open the floor for the audience. And first questions come to Ms. Victoria Litvinova, the Deputy Prosecutor General. Let's talk more about the illegal deportation of children. When do Ukrainian prosecutors record the first cases?
Thank you, Elena. As we already mentioned, deportation began from the very beginning of Russia's aggressions in 2014. Right after the occupations of Crimea, the Russian government launched the Train of Hope program. It relocated Russian citizens to Crimea to adopt orphaned children. This was not about helping children. It was part of a broader strategy to integrate Crimea into Russia and alter the regional's demographics. A similar scenario unfolded just before the full-scale invasions in 2022. Leaders of so-called DPR and LPR announced mass evacuations, particularly of children. According to the investigation, children from boarding school and orphanages were the first to be removed. Uncovering such crime is a painstaking task. It requires proving every element of the crime for each deported child. Investigators must demonstrate that there were no security or medical reason to justify the child relocation. The collected evidence proves that in Crimea and Donbass, Russian authorities refined their child deportation strategy. During the full-scale invasion, they implemented this same playbook in newly occupied territories. Children were deported not only from state institutions, but also from families, children who had parents and relatives. During the investigation, we reconstructed the timeline of events and hierarchical chain of officials, masterminds, and collaborators involved in these crimes. We discovered that Russian authorities even amended national legislation to make this easier. Presidential decrees of 2022 were issued to fast-track Russian citizenship for Ukrainian minors. Children under 14 didn't even need to give consent. Those over 14 had to swear allegiance to the Russian Federation. After these legal changes, Russia launched propaganda campaign promoting the adoptions of Ukrainian children by Russian families. In 2022, children from Donbass received Russian passport in ceremonies in the Moscow region. Commissioner for Children's Rights Lvova Belova publicly stated she had adopted a teenager from Mariupol. The leader of the pro-Putin Just Russia party and State Duma deputy Sergei Mironov adopted an 11-month-old girl illegally taken from Kherson by his wife. At least 400 Ukrainian children are known to have been placed in Russia foster family. Time is not on our side. Russia changed their names, falsify documents, erase memories. Children are subjected to forced integrations and indoctrinations. The most cynical manifestations of this policy is the adoptions of Ukrainian children by family involved in so-called special military operations against Ukraine. State media actively promote these events. During a meeting between Vladimir Putin and the wives and mothers of soldiers fighting in Ukraine, one woman admitted to taking a 4-year-old girl from the Kherson region. Another disturbing aspect of Russia policy is military patriotic education. In February 2023, Russia has passed a law integrating occupied territories into its educational system. Children must study using Russian textbook. Speaking Ukrainian is forbidden. Education has been militarized. Children are taught to handle weapons, meet with military personnel, and are encouraged to join paramilitary structure like UnArmia. And eventually, these children may be used in the war against their own country.
Thank you. And the second question, you mentioned that thousands of Ukrainian children have become victims of Russian aggression, and this includes both those who were illegally deported and victims of attacks and other type of crimes. How do you work with them?
Thank you for these questions. It's very important for us to build the criminal proceeding in such a way that the child does not suffer additional trauma, as mentioned all previous speakers today before. The Prosecutor General Office is advancing child-friendly justice. This means proving full access to justice without causing trauma. Instead, we're focusing on facilitating rehabilitation and reintegration into society. We have minimized interviews and investigative procedures involving children. We engage psychologists who are specialized in working with children. With our partners, we opened 13 child-friendly Barnahus centers where children receive support in a safe and nurturing environment. In 2023, we established the Victim and Witnesses Coordination Center to support affected by the war, including children. The center's mission is to provide comprehensive support to survivors, ensuring access to necessary medical, psychological, legal, humanitarian, and other assistance. Today, the center specialists work with nearly 1,000 children affected by war crimes. We have established effective cooperations also with civil sector and civil society to enhance support for victims.
Thank you, Ms. Litvinova. And now I would like to ask a question to Ms. Katerina Rashevska. What legal precedents or international frameworks to holding perpetrators accountable, especially those who are currently beyond the reach of Ukrainian jurisdiction, and how to overcome these obstacles?
Thank you so much for this question. Despite all the uniqueness of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, this crime of deportation of children and also of the assimilation is not the new one. During the Second World War, I'm sure that our audience is aware, the Nazist Germany representatives deported thousands of children from occupied territories. They selected them and then transferred to German families for the so-called re-education. Some children were transferred to specific institutions in order to be re-educated and then to become German military or representatives of Nazi government. So it was already, and after the end of the Second World War, our Ukrainian scientist, lawyer, Raphael Lemkin, started thinking how we can punish it, how we can prevent it from being happening in future. And then we voted the Genocide Convention, but unfortunately, as we know, today, even the ICC, after the issuance of arrest warrants, has no additional qualification of the act of deportation of Ukrainian children and their education as a crime of genocide or even the crime against humanity. And I suppose that this is a problem because when we are not calling the evil by its proper name, it may provoke the repetition of the scenario. And non-efficient reaction for the deportation of Ukrainian children since 2014 actually provoked the large-scale deportation of Ukrainian children after February 2022, because Russians, they were sure that the reaction will be the same, that they will be able to persuade the international community that this is only rescue operation, humanitarian action to protect children, and not an international crime, and not the crime of the crimes, genocide. So we have the problem with this qualification, with non-proper qualification. Of course, deportation is good, but it is not enough in order to prevent the repetition of crimes. And also it is not enough in order to ensure justice. Because some children, okay, maybe by legal terms they were not deported, but they were but their delay they were subjected to the unreasonable delay of repatriation. They were subjected to re-education, to militarization, to indoctrination. As for today, we don't have any definition of militarization and political indoctrination in the international law. How we can prosecute these actions? I'm sure that in this audience there is no person who supports the policy of militarization of children in occupied territories, who support the transformation of children from one nation to the enemies of their homeland. So this is something strange. It is against humanity, and it should be recognized as a crime against humanity. But unfortunately, we have no legal precedents in order to do it. So I am really grateful for all the competent bodies, because Office of the Prosecutor General, they are doing really hard work in order to persuade even international experts that militarization and political indoctrination should be prosecuted as war crime or crime against humanity. So we have this fight on the margin of the fight against Russian aggression, this fight for justice, for accountability, and of course any support, any investigation under the universal jurisdiction principle, so investigation of militarization and indoctrination of Ukrainian children as a crime against humanity will be very beneficial for Ukrainian children.
Thank you, Ms. Rashevska. And now I would like to address the question to Mr. Gardner. How can ADIR help national and international legal systems become better prepared to investigate and prosecute war crimes against children, especially in cases as complex as deportations?
So one of the facilities that ODIHR has is to provide legal reviews for legislation, existing legislation or pending legislation, including on issues that could be the prosecution of international crimes, including war crimes and crimes against humanity. So that is a facility that is well used, but we're aware that this is a complex area and also an area that OSCE participating states, not all of them have for example, legislation which allows them to prosecute crimes taking place in other jurisdictions. So, I mean, for example, in terms of universal jurisdiction, if states have legislation which they would like to advance, or maybe are thinking about legislation, this is something we could offer our expertise in and advice through formal legal reviews, and also through, of course, informal dialogue and assistance in that way. Maybe I'll leave it at that for now, and I'll come back to the issue of reparations and also accountability from the perspective of victims, which is also important.
Thank you. And now I would like to ask Ms. Luckhofer, what policy advice or technical support can FRA, the agency for EU Agency for Fundamental Rights, provides to EU institutions, to member states, or to Ukraine to ensure these children's identity, language, and cultural ties are preserved and restored?
Thank you very much. Hello, sorry. So we are currently actually conducting and finalizing a large survey that we have carried out with women who have fled from the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine towards the EU, many of them with children, on the human rights abuses that they have been facing. And we will be finalizing this research in November with a report and with recommendations. We have seen actually that many of the children that have been also moving together with their moms from Ukraine towards the EU have really experienced traumatic situations. So we will have this body of evidence with which we will contribute, but also our work, I would say, on guardianship, on child protection, on integrated child protection systems, and the safeguards that are necessary to uphold would be some of the most important policy relevance. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I would like to come back again to Ms. Katerina Rashevska and ask her, if traditional legal roads are blocked or slow, what alternative accountability mechanisms, such as universal jurisdiction or national level trials in third countries, should European states consider?
Thank you so much for this question, because this question includes already the answer, but I would like to expand this spectrum of instruments available for Ukrainian children and for their legal representatives in order to ensure for them justice. We should understand that criminal justice is not the only way. There are other instruments, and the Regional Center for Human Rights organization, where I am a legal expert, we are started preparing individual complaints on behalf of these children to the International Committee on Political and Civic Rights, so under the Covenant on Political and Civic Rights. We should understand that, unfortunately, the Russian Federation has not recognized the jurisdiction, for example, of the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child, and this instrument is not available for us, but at least the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child is a good option. We would like to receive some concrete opinion of the experts of this committee in order to help also our justice system to have these concrete links between different violations, between different acts of perpetrators, including indoctrination and militarization of children, and also some negative consequences for children and for their rights. And also I would like to highlight a very importance of another mean. This is a sanction policy. I started talking about it during my intervention, but I would like to repeat because in the context of the displacement of Ukrainian children to Belarus, to these re-education camps, the sanction policy was so efficient that during the first months of 2025, we are not documenting the transfer of any Ukrainian children to Belarus. So it is our joint victory, the concrete result of the reaction of the international community, of the sanctions of the European Union, of Canada, of the United States, United Kingdom. All these hearings in national parliaments, resolutions highlighting the role of the Belarus regime in this militarization, indoctrination and forcible displacement of Ukrainian children was good enough in order to repress this policy. So I hope that we will not see Ukrainian children in Belarus also at the end of this year and never. And I hope that the sanction regime will be also efficient to repress the actions of Russian officials, at least at the medium level. Of course, we understand that Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova will not stop because of sanctions, but other perpetrators may.
Thank you, dear Katerina. And the last question from me comes to Mr. Gardner. I will not monopolize the panel anymore and open the discussion to the audience. The last question is, how can ODIHR help expose all those involved in the deportation of Ukrainian children, including officials not only in Russia but in Belarus, and support countries in closing legal gaps that allow perpetrators to escape justice?
Thank you. I mean, I think our main contribution to accountability, as I said, is through our interviews that we're conducting. And obviously this is from the survivors. So this is only one part of what, for example, prosecutors would need to build a case to find persecutors. But I think it's important to see accountability from the perspective of survivors and victims. And as I said previously, you know, it's important for survivors and victims to be listened to be heard, and for their voices to be shown, and for it to be acknowledged what happened. So I think the work that we do and others do is also important in terms of this being a first step. Likewise, for states, what can they do? I mean, as I mentioned, you know, steps taken to prosecute, but also to look at accountability from the perspective of survivors and victims. So many, as we've heard, children and other survivors of violations in Ukraine are now outside Ukraine. There are important steps which can be done in terms of providing rehabilitation for them, for psychosocial services, making sure that they get the support that they want. This, again, is a part of accountability, and even potentially interim reparations as well for them. So there are many things which other states can do. Some are doing already, but I think all can do more.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. And now I would like to open the floor. I would like to open the discussion with the distinguished audience. Please, you're welcome to ask your questions. Please limit your questions to half a minute. And I would like to ask speakers to keep their answers within 2 minutes. Thank you. Do we have a microphone for okay. So you can use your microphone. Yeah, the floor is yours. And please introduce yourself.
I am ambassador of Croatia here.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. I am Josip Buljević, I am Ambassador of Croatia here to Finland. And first of all, thank you for excellent presentation, very interesting and very useful. And also thank you to organizers for to organize this topic. This issue should be much more visible in Europe and all around the globe. I would like to ask one question. Through the practice of International Hague Tribunal, they have had very useful legal tactics to define some war crimes as united criminal enterprise. I would like to ask Madam Rashevska, Madam Litvanova, or maybe Mr. Gardner, do you see any legal possibility to define this deportation of Ukrainian children as united criminal enterprise? In that case, it will be much more easier to prosecute all involved in that crime activities. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Who takes the question? Ms. Rashevska, please.
So I will briefly answer on behalf of myself and also of our Office of the Prosecutor General. So as far as a joint criminal enterprise, of course, we are looking for this concept in order to prove also this plan and policy element. And it is important not only to qualify the crime as a war crime, but also as a crime against humanity. We have some problems at the national level with common responsibility and how to qualify the joint criminal enterprise, but of course we will solve everything in order to do it. And it is also our aim to see all the picture, not as some sporadic acts and incidents of medium-level representatives of occupation authorities or even of Russian government, but as a Russian policy, the policy of the Russian Federation headed by the President Vladimir Putin. And the same approach is shared with the ICC.
Thank you, Ms. Rashevska. And I would like to give the floor to the lady. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Olina, and thank you for arranging this important event and to the panelists for your interventions. The most effective way to deprive a country its future
Excuse me, could you introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry. My name is Carina Ödebrink, and I'm a Swedish parliamentarian and also rapporteur in the support team for Ukraine in the OSCE. Sorry for that.
Thank you. We had a meeting, we had a Zoom. It was an online meeting, so I couldn't recognize
I was a little bit stressed about the time limit. The most important way to deprive a country its future is to start with the children, and that's exactly what Russia is doing right now, and since 2014. We have also been reached by reports from earlier this year that Russia is planning to deport tens of thousands of Ukrainian children from occupied territories in the summer of 25 this year. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russian authorities intend to intensify deportations of Ukrainian children to Russia during the summer as a part of a broader campaign to assimilate these children into Russian society. What can Ukraine and the member states do to prevent this from happening? Thank you.
Thank you. And the question goes to...
Unfortunately, it's also not questions for me as a prosecutor. I also waiting for some parliament decisions to prevent, to stop this, but I can imagine what they can do. Probably we all together should think about this today and make some universal statement about this, what next step, because it's not finished. But as I mentioned, as a prosecutors, when we only have the legislative framework, we can act. Another way, we can't do something. Thank you for your important questions and for thinking about the future and how to prevent it in general.
Just to briefly add to the answer, so this is not something new. Russians are organizing these recreation camps, and it is not only for summer period, it is for the whole year. And in 2024, the network of these institutions was 18 in Belarus, as we already know, now in Belarus there are no institutions for Ukrainian children, 14 in occupied territories of Ukraine, mostly in Crimea, in Yevpatoria, near Russian military objects, and also 67 institutions, camps in the Russian Federation itself. What can we do? So Artak, one of the biggest camps occupied by Russia in Crimea, was already included into the sanction list in the European Union, for example. So we can do the same in other jurisdictions in order to deprive Russians money and possibilities to organize these recreation trips for Ukrainian children. But this is not only one camp, as I have already mentioned. And also I would like to attract your attention to new trends. Russians are organizing these trips to other states. And in 2024, Ukrainian children were in India and also in China. So we should carry out some discussions with our foreign partners in order to prevent such transfers.
Thank you, Ms. Rashevska. And with regards to what Ukraine does, about this. Recently, Ukrainian parliament has adopted the law that introduces the changes into criminal code of Ukraine, criminalizing the facts of deportations and forcible displacements, and also indoctrination and militarization. And of course, it is very important for Ukraine to engage international community, and there are many actions that our partners, our international partners, and the parliaments of our fellow states can do with regards to stop these deportations. And the speakers already mentioned what instruments can be used. These are sanctions, these are political statements, this is cooperation between law enforcement agencies. This is facilitation of and helping organizations who are working on identification and search of Ukrainian children in Russia. So there is a wide spectrum of actions that every state, every parliament can be involved in, and we will be very much grateful if you will. Thank you, dear colleagues. And do we have yeah, please, if you'd like to comment.
Yes, I just wanted to add one small additional thing, because you have mentioned also these study trips or visits to China. In June, there will be EU-China human rights dialogue. And if, of course, that is also a possibility where to raise such issues. So please do share also information with us, and we will be glad to raise any issues in this regard. Thank you.
Dear colleagues, yes, Ms. Despina? At the end. Yes, okay. Mr. Paolo Pisca, please take the floor.
Okay. Thank you so much. I have some questions.
Could you introduce yourself to the audience, to those who don't know you personally?
Okay. My name is Paolo Pisco. I'm the rapporteur of the report that has been made 2 years ago on children from Ukraine deported to Russian Federation. And I have mainly 3 small questions. One of them is around the numbers, because I have always had that doubt, because so far have been identified around 20,000 children that have been deported. And nevertheless, only 1,300 have been returned. And nevertheless, the numbers are much higher than those that are known. It means in June 22, the Deputy Prime Minister of Ukraine, Irina Vereshchuk, said that at least 240,000 children were deported. The Russian agency TASS said this number that of children that went to Russia was close to 500,000. And so my first question is, which information, or do you have any kind of information about all those children that are being said to be deported and that do not appear generally when we talk about this question? The second question is, Madam Victoria Litvinova said that children may be used in the war. My question is there any evidence that children that have been deported has been used in the war? And my third and last question is, now that the war will finish one day, and there is any evidence that the question of deported children will be on the table for the peace talks? Thank you.
Thank you. The first question I would like to comment. So you were asking about if we possess the info about all the children who were deported. No, we don't, because this is extremely difficult, and such organizations like Yale University Lab is helping us to search and to identify and to establish whereabouts of children who are now in Russia. So it is very difficult and unfortunately slow process. It takes many efforts. So we have information about some of these children. I cannot disclose the figure, and the official number is 19,546 children. The official number of children who the facts of deportations of whom have been recorded. And now I give the floor to Ms. Roshevska. Excuse me. I'm so sorry, to Ms. Litvinova.
Okay. I will use Ukrainian language, okay? If you can prepare your equipment. I'm sorry for this tricky moment because I'm not fluent in English and it's for me some tricky task. I will start. В моєму виступі я звернула увагу на те, що відбувається із українськими дітьми після того, як вони потрапляють до Російської Федерації. Зупинилась на тому, що їм нав'язують російське громадянство і надають російські паспорти. І відповідно, після того, як ця дитина досягає повноліття, вона вже має російський паспорт, вона вже прийняла присягу, про яку я підкреслила, акцентувала увагу на те, що дітей зобов'язують присягати на вірність Російській Федерації. І відповідно, коли вже українська дитина має російське громадянство, вона зобов'язана за законами Російської Федерації і може приймати участь у військових операціях. Оскільки наших дітей, вони підтверджені оцій мілітаризованій освіті, їх, власне кажучи, налаштовують на те, що вони мають змагатися, і приймати участь у бойових діях, то після цього, звісно, не виключені випадки того, що вже повнолітні українські діти вступають за контрактом чи іншими формами до Збройних сил Російської Федерації. Щодо доказів цього, в нас є докази цього, можу сказати, що це прямі докази, це є свідчення повернутих українських дітей, які розповідали про своїх старших товаришів і давали нам чіткі сигнали того, що деякі з них приймають участь в бойових операціях.
Thank you very much.
The last question about peace talks.
Do we have the last question you would like to answer? Okay.
Yes, we had also the last question about peace talks and the place of the repatriation of Ukrainian children during this process. So we should understand that inside Ukrainian peace formula there is a point 4 where it is clearly indicated that all Ukrainians, POWs, civilians, including children, should be returned. And for Ukraine it is a high priority. But we also see that during all these technical consultations, the Russian Federation didn't demonstrate any attempt to cooperate with us and to help us to return all 19,546 identified children. Firstly, Ukrainian transferred the list of 500 names and surnames. Then President Zelensky transferred through the South Africa President Ramaphosa the list of 400 names and surnames of Ukrainian children for repatriation. And where is the result? Where is the group of 400 Ukrainian deported children who were returned by Russians? So we should continue this pressure by economic means, by political means, by opening new legal case in different courts and tribunals, including national ones, in order to push Russians to return children. Because if they are not ready to respect their international obligations in this very limited context, return of a very vulnerable category, Ukrainian children, how they will be able to respect any possible ceasefire or peaceful agreement.
Thank you. And we have 2 more questions. I would like to give the floor in the end. You would like to ask in the end. Okay, please.
Thank you very much. My name is Elina Pekkarinen. I'm the Ombudsperson for Children in Finland.
Could you speak closer to the microphone?
Yes. I'm the chair of ENOC, the European Network for the Ombudspersons for Children. I don't know why it doesn't like me, clearly. I have a very short question. Do we have any idea of the proportion of the children that are deported that have come from institutions like orphanages or reform schools or institutions for children with disabilities? I'm just wondering because returning to a family is different for a child that has been raised in an institution, and I haven't been able to find this information anywhere. So do you have any idea? Thank you.
So according to Irina Vereshchuk, we have among these 19,546 children, around 4,000 children who were deported or forcibly transferred from institutions, from boarding school, orphanages, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. And the last question goes. The last question is for Ms. Despina, the Secretary General of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Elena. It's not a question, it's a proposal, because I'm really impressed of the discussion your panel held, and I see as a lawyer all the legal implications. So I would like to draw your attention to the following. We have a discussion in June of a report on the legal consequences of the Russian Federation's aggression against Ukraine. The rapporteur, Mr. Eric Kroes, is prepared by Legal Affairs and Human Rights Committee. And I think it would be very important for your network to look at this text. and try already at this stage to propose not too many, but 1 or 2 sentences to make the link with what we are discussing today. And this would allow us, I'm getting now a little bit technical, but it would allow us in the Bureau of the Assembly to immediately initiate, as a follow-up to this general report on legal consequences, a specific report on the legal aspects of the deportation of children. And I think the contribution of the panelists today would be extremely useful, and I would like to see many of them also coming to Strasbourg or Paris to speak to our colleagues from Legal Affairs and Human Rights. Thank you so much. It was really a wonderful discussion, very useful.
Thank you very much, Ms. Despina. We will take your advice, of course, and we will work on the resolution. And now, dear colleagues, I would like to invite you to make a family photo, and then the lunch will start.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us for this final session of what has been, I hope you find, a very important day. We've learnt an awful lot. We're going to continue to learn. It's a pleasure to be with you. My name's Kasia Madeira. I'm from BBC News, and I've come especially from London to be here with you. Full disclosure, I do have a lot of interest in what's happening in Ukraine. My father was originally from Lviv, but obviously now, with the full-scale invasion, I've managed to get to Ukraine a few times, but obviously with what is happening with the deportations, the illegal deportations of the children, it's really excellent that and important that this session has been raised. So thank you very much to everybody and to the immense expertise as well. We have heard a lot about the illegality of these deportations. We've heard about what can be done to bring the kids back. We've touched a little bit in the previous session about the rehabilitation of these children, and we're going to just focus a little bit more on that because we've got an incredible panel of people with first-hand experience of this, I'm very pleased to say. And we need to just understand that when it comes to the trauma of what these children have experienced, and let's just keep reminding ourselves, these are kids, right? These are children. They've experienced not just displacement, not just being ripped away from their parents, the psychological harm that they've had, even stuff like interrupted education, right? This is stuff that, you know, broken family ties, the not knowing what is going to happen to them. This isn't going to be treated just by them coming back, right? We've heard about the numbers that have thankfully been returned. The return is just the beginning because, of course, they need to be reintegrated, and that kind of reintegration needs to be holistic, and it takes a long, long time. There's an awful lot to unpick, given what these kids have experienced. And so we're going to look at that, and we're going to focus in with, like I say, an esteemed panel with an awful lot of experience. I'm very pleased to say joining us is Thordis Gylfadóttir. I'm sure I've massacred your name. I'm so sorry about that. But a really experienced Icelandic politician who has had lots of numerous positions within the Icelandic government. But since February, congratulations, you've been appointed as the Special Envoy of the Secretary General of the Council of Europe on the situation of children of Ukraine, and I know you've been to Ukraine very recently, so we're very much looking forward to hearing about your experience there. We're also joined by Elina Pekarinen, who's the Ombudsman for Children in Finland, and also chairperson of ENOC, which is the European Network of Ombudspersons for Children. Welcome, and we'll hear a little bit more from you as well. We're also joined by somebody who really has that grassroots experience, Mariam Lambert, the co-founder and CEO of the Emil Foundation. and you'll be sharing with your experiences and the work that you're doing with many of the children who have been returned. And like I say, it's just a beginning of a really long process. And really thrilled to have also Alexander Matvichuk, who's head of the Center of Civil Liberties. Of course, that's one of the organizations that back in 2022 was awarded the Nobel Prize for Peace, along with 2 other organizations. But she'll be joining us remotely. She's in Ukraine, so let's put it this way, it's a war zone, it's difficult to get communications. She will be joining us, hopefully, fingers crossed, imminently. So we're going to hear from our panelists a little bit more about what they do, and then we're going to hear your questions. So please start thinking about those questions. We have extreme experience here, not much time, so I'm going to stop talking, and Thordis, I'll give you the floor first of all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you, and especially the ones coming from Ukraine and the Ukrainian people that are here. First of all, let me express my gratitude for being invited to participate in this event. I am sure that all of us share many of the same concerns, and I know that many of you in the audience possess great expertise far beyond mine. I am grateful for what I have been able to take in, listening to the parts of the programs I was able to attend, and hope that I will get a chance to listen to and learn more from you in the future. It helps me guide my efforts in my role as Special Envoy on the situation of the children of Ukraine for the Council of Europe. And as we all have an ambition in our own roles to make it count, I believe we are all learning from one another. All of us who are taking part today wish to be useful for the important cause we are discussing. If any of you believe that my involvement can be of use to your efforts, or think that it would be useful to have further dialogue, I am more than willing to give you my direct personal contact information after the session, because we really need to work together. Dear friends, I am sure we are all watching with a mix of hope and trepidation all the diplomatic efforts that are going on these days. There have been a lot of false hopes, a lot of false starts. But mostly there's a lot of drama that keeps the news media busy. To tell you the truth, I sometimes wonder if much of the West is watching the war like it's some sort of a TV drama or a reality TV show. And unfortunately, I get the sense that there is an all too common misconception that a temporary or prolonged ceasefire will be some sort of a final episode. That people are hoping so intensely for an end that they will not have the attention span to focus on what comes next. That the world will lose interest in what happens in the aftermath. And I really do not mean to make this sound trite. I simply really don't have a better analogy for this concern. But while politicians and media pundits are busy analyzing the comments and theatrics of the diplomatic drama, nothing changes for those whose lives are being damaged and destroyed on a day-to-day basis because of Russia's action. Perhaps the ugliest aspects of Russia's war of aggression of Ukraine is the willful policy of destroying the lives of children. We all hope that peace will come to Ukraine and freedom will be secured. But whatever happens in other matters, there will not be any justice unless the issue of Ukrainian children is appropriately addressed and resolved. And for Ukraine to prosper, there will need to be a gigantic effort to help rehabilitate those who have suffered terrible physical and psychological trauma at the hands of the aggressor. The safe return of the children and ultimately their successful reintegration into Ukrainian society, as well as the protection of children at risk of deportation, are a priority concern for both Ukraine and the international community. It is clear that addressing the needs of these children is a colossal challenge, perhaps one of the greatest challenges of our times. For how can one ever repair such evil? Following my recent visit to Ukraine, I believe that amongst the most acute need is trauma-informed support. Trauma-informed care and accountability are vital preconditions to any sustainable reconstruction. Trauma-informed support is essential as a mean in itself, so as to be able to address the deep emotional scars that war has left on these children and to avoid their re-traumatization. It is also very linked to any effective accountability process by ensuring the accuracy of children's testimonies during criminal investigations and for a subsequent trial. As this war of aggression tragically drags into its 4th year, it is more apparent than ever that Ukraine's reconstruction efforts and any hope for sustainable peace can only be achieved if there is effective accountability, and effective accountability is based on a trauma-informed approach. Despite the deep-rooted, widespread and debilitating trauma among all war-affected children of Ukraine, many frontline professionals working with children lack training in trauma-informed care and children's rights, both within and outside Ukraine. Efforts by the Council of Europe to develop comprehensive trauma-informed materials, such as manuals and training courses for frontline professionals working with children in times of crisis, including journalists, are advancing well. However, given the extent of the trauma, coupled with the cost of implementing such training effectively on a larger scale, financial commitments will be needed. Without trauma-informed care for children of Ukraine, any reconstruction efforts would represent an almost empty promise on rebuilding Ukraine. Because very often when we talk about reconstruction and the need to rebuild a nation, it's very often about roads and bridges and infrastructure. But you can't really rebuild a nation that is fully traumatized, and especially when the future of that nation really needs that kind of support. So member states, whatever, in which organizations, are financially supporting Ukraine and talking about reconstruction and to rebuild Ukraine, really have to have those classes on as well, on trauma. My ambition is to be of use to this cause of helping the children of Ukraine. It is a cause that is obviously greater than myself and greater than the institution that has given me the platform I am standing on. I know that all of us here share this dedication, and I hope we are all in it for the long haul, because these are issues that will take a long-term commitment, no matter what the day-to-day spectacle on the news is telling us. What matters are the individuals, the children and their families, who are only asking to be allowed to return to a normal life as ordinary people, but to be free. Again, I hope that I will be able to make connections here today, and that we all consider ourselves to be a part of the same team and with the same aims. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you. Elena, do you want to say a few words? Thank you. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Elina and I'm the Ombudsperson for Children in Finland and also the chairperson of ENOC, the European Network for Ombudspersons in Europe. ENOC is an organization that is placed in the facilities of Council of Europe, but it is an independent NGO. It has 34 countries and 44 institutions, and all of the countries are members of the Council of Europe. Today, nobody has said this, so I don't know if you know which UN day it is today. Come on, people. It could be. Today marks the United Nations International Day of Families. And I think it is a poignant coincidence and in many ways a profound opportunity that we gather here today to discuss an issue that, in my view, has not received the full attention it urgently deserves. As Katharina Lughofer from FRA has aptly stated, the family is the most fundamental unit in a child's life. Every child has the right to grow up in a family environment marked by love and understanding. Yet, for many families in Europe and in Finland, has the shadow of a war trauma still lingering, often stemming from the First or Second World War. My grandmother was Estonian, and so written into my DNA is the deep, lived knowledge that our eastern neighbor can be unpredictable and its history is brutal. Members of my own family were displaced, disappeared, or fled across the globe. For centuries, Russia has mastered the art of indoctrinating children. My own relatives were sent to military service, the boys, on remote islands near to Japan or to Siberia, deliberately exiled far from their homes. These generational traumas are still very much with us. So what can we do here and now to ensure that children are able to return home and that their right to family life is fully realized? I believe that the only path forward is through strong, unwavering cooperation. This belief is what has driven my involvement in ENOC's leadership and my service as its chair since last autumn. I am proud that a shared commitment to collaboration unites ombudspersons in the Nordic countries, across Europe, and increasingly on a global scale. Children everywhere need independent defenders of their rights, and these defenders need each other's solidarity and support. When Russia launched its invasion of Ukraine in 2022, ENOC responded immediately. We formed working groups to map the situation of Ukrainian children arriving in different countries. These groups met regularly, sharing insights and collecting data. This work resulted in recommendations such as mandatory registration of children and families, reception, emergency response for unaccompanied and separated children, guardianship, reception and living conditions in the reception countries, child-friendly procedures, child sexual exploitation and trafficking, and financial and material assistance to first reception countries. We renewed the position last autumn, calling once more for the return of children unlawfully transferred to Russia. It is shocking that all of this has happened before our very eyes. As we have heard today, the process of returning children is immensely complex. When I began as an ombudsperson for children 6 years ago, in the spring of 2019, there were over 30,000 children captivated in a camp in Syria, Al-Hol. I witnessed firsthand the efforts of Finnish authorities and politicians to repatriate 30 Finnish children back to Finland. Both international and national law seemed powerless, but still, more than 20 of those 30 children have been returned with their mothers. This shows that international law can prevail. But our offers must not be reduced to legal and administrative procedures alone. We must begin now the systematic work for preparing for children's return, no matter how long it takes. This includes identifying and supporting the families to whom the children will be returned. It means training professionals, including Russian-speaking specialists who can offer support to children upon their return. We need early childhood educators. We need teachers, youth workers, psychotherapists. We need social workers and medical professionals. We must also support the parents who will welcome these children back. I cannot overstate how crucial this preparedness is. At the same time, we must also acknowledge and correct mistakes that have been made in supporting Ukrainian refugee children already among us. In some families, children are living in poverty, poor housing conditions, or situations involving mental health challenges, substance abuse, or violence, often as a direct consequence of trauma and displacement. Just last week, I spoke to a school principal who described how Ukrainian primary school children, the small ones, are now turning against one another. They express their trauma through fighting, bullying, and humiliation using a language most Finnish teachers do not understand. These children are in urgent need of help. I sincerely hope that today's meeting will not remain a symbolic gesture or a mere expression of good intentions. Let it be the beginning of a genuine cooperation toward real solutions. I think that we must not give up hope, but sustaining hope requires action. Thank you.
Alina, thank you so much, and it's really important that we do get action points, so thank you. Mariam, let's hear from you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a bit difficult when you're one of the last one. Just trying not to keep repeating what has been said with esteemed guests and panel speakers today, because it was very important, but I will try to keep you awake at least. So my name is Mariam Lambert. I'm the co-founder of Emil Foundation, but also a member of the GLOBSEC Women Leader Council. I stand here because when the war started in 2014, I was a European civil servant. I was having a comfortable life. I have 3 children, fantastic husband, and I felt sorry for the Ukrainian when the war started in 2014. So I watched the TV and I just had some sympathy for them. I felt absolutely guilty when the war started again in 2022, because we have done nothing to prevent that, and we allowed the Russians to do the same again and again. So in 2022, when the war started again, I decided to take a sabbatical year. I thought it would be 1 year. It's been 4 years now. After 18 years as a civil servant, I decided to do the job with my team and to be on the ground. That's my story. But before I start, it's very important for me to thank the people who organized that event today. We always said, as civil society, we always criticize the politician. They're just talking, they don't do anything. But today we have, most of you are politicians who are doing things. We had the honor of having Mia Patra as our goodwill ambassador. And last year, 2 years ago first, she listened to the stories about the children deportation, and she said, I need to do something. Less than a year ago, she immediately arranged all sorts of meetings with politicians in Finland, with journalists, to talk about this, because she was really convinced that we need to talk more about this. And a few months later, she's here with us. And thanks also to the Council of Europe, to the Parliamentary Assembly, to Olena Komenko, but also importantly, and she's the invisible heroes here, everywhere you have invisible heroes, it's Olena Konenko. Sorry if I don't pronounce it well, but she's been here, but behind the scenes, she was making sure that this conference have a diverse panelist in order to understand the problem. So thank you all for making this happen. Our organization was created in 2011. It was just something to do next to our luxury life. We were starting to help children around the world. So we started in Kenya, in Nepal. We built orphanages. We had children there in Morocco. And when the war started, as I told you, we just stopped everything and focused 100% on Ukraine. We started in March 2022 with humanitarian aid, but this organization is running with one specific point, is everything is run by us, with us, and with the local community. So I spend a lot of time in Bakhmut, Kherson, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, in order to report back what is happening to the Ukrainian people. Because after 3 years, sometimes you can hear the atrocity of saying, but it's Ukrainian propaganda. And that's something we need to be on the ground and to listen to the stories and to experience that, to ensure that we need to report back as a non-Ukrainian that Ukraine is suffering. Ukraine is in a position that needs the whole world to support them, and not just the neutral countries. We really need the support of all the countries, because what is happening in Ukraine with the Ukrainian, it's a humanitarian disaster. When we started in 2022, a few years later, we heard about the children, and we decided to also work on that. Initially, we were financing some return with the institutions, with the Bring Kids Back as well, and now we are more independent, working on things which maybe some people are not working on. We just want to fill the gap, because the Ukrainian authorities, Ukrainian NGOs are doing a fantastic job. And therefore, we don't want to replicate, we just want to fill the gap, and we just want to support. So we've been working on returning the children, but not yet. We are identifying children who are mainly in Kherson Oblast, which is the Oleshki special boarding school. We are also taking care of families when they return since 2023. And that's a very important point I would like to mention. We are also trying to return children who are held in Russian prison. This is something we don't hear often, and I didn't hear that today. But you need to understand that children, when they are between 13 and 17 years old, living under occupation, if they resist of getting a Russian passport, if they don't obey to the Russian authorities, they are held in prison, as crazy as it sounds. They are all held in prison with fabricated cases, so you can understand that for those children it's an extremely complex mechanism to return them. That's one point. The second point is also the sanction. We heard today a lot that the only thing that works is sanction, is power. So we are actually gathering information with a list of people who are involved in deportation. We hear a lot about the Russian Federation, ministers, Duma, but we forget to tell you that actually there is more than that. In occupied territories, most of them are teachers, doctors, nurses. All of them are organizing those deportations. So those are the individual sanctions that we need to talk about. And another point is the advocacy program as well. We know that the Council of Europe, Parliamentary Assembly, and other states are doing a fantastic job in diplomacy. But sometimes we also believe that backdoor channel could work, at least to open doors and to hand over the work to the Ukrainian authorities or to the European Union in order to continue the work. So we've been in 27 countries. And I was myself in 27 countries, to talk about the deportation is a real issue that didn't start in 2022, but in 2014. And the deportation is not just about saving children, as the Russian Federation is mentioning, but it's a real crime. They are not just taking the children, they are indoctrinating them, they are militarizing them, and they are erasing them for any identity. And those children we are talking about are from 17 months old to 17 years old. 17 months old. We have cases of a child who was deported when who was abducted when she was 17 months. It's been 3 years. We have an ethical problem. The child will probably never remember her mother, who is looking for her. But in all this, and I know I need to be short, but I would like to mention a very concrete case, because civil society, we are very, very pragmatic. But that story really breaks my heart as a mother of 3 children. It's one of the most humanitarian disasters for us and painful work is the Oleshki special boarding school in Kherson. Oleshki boarding school, before the war, was actually one of the best institutions in Ukraine. It was a pride of Ukraine, where children with special needs, disabilities, autism, were actually in this institution and having a normal life and schooling program. It was really one of the unique places. But that school was under occupation within the hours of the full-scale invasion in February. And now I would like to speak on behalf of Vadim, a teacher that I met, who was actually witnessing the whole deportation about those children. So we are talking about children who cannot run away. They have disabilities, they need special care, they need special medical care every single day, and they need love of their parents, who didn't abandon them, as we can hear on different stories. No, those children needed to be taken care of in this institution and were seeing their parents every single day. But when the war started in 2022, the Russian came to that school. It was in summer 2022, and it was a point of no return for that school. They entered the building, they took away the Ukrainian flag, and they entered the school. They first destroyed all the drawings from the children. Anything related to Ukraine was destroyed. And the teachers, the Ukrainian teachers and doctors were witnessing that. They couldn't move, but they resisted. They didn't want them to go further. They took the children in a basement, trying to protect them. But it was not enough. And in September, they replaced the Ukrainian director by a Russian one. The same month, the kids receive a visit of a doctor who was apparently conducting medical examination and trying to organize holidays in occupied Crimea. And unfortunately, in October, they started to evacuate 16 children. In November 4th, they evacuate another 12 children. In November 11, which is a very important date, it was just a few days before the deoccupation, before the Ukrainians managed to deoccupy the city, all the children were gone. We are talking about 105 children who are left vulnerable, who were just innocent people, children, and needed the parents. The teachers were left, the doctors were left with a completely ghost school. Nobody didn't know what to do. They were transferred, apparently, to occupied Crimea, to psychiatric hospital also in Crimea, and we don't know what happened to them. Only few children returned and were found. So that work is very important for us. We are trying first to identify the families, and we identified also the children, but it's a very small work in the big disaster that we are talking about. So today we are talking about 35,000 children that Natalia and Raymond mentioned. But you know, the way we are talking about that, the way we work about that, it will take maybe 50 years if we manage to return all the children. So what is important is that all of us today, we need to keep that on the agenda. We need to talk about that. But most importantly, we need to think about the after. The mechanism of return includes, and that was well mentioned before, about the rehabilitation, the trauma that all those children are facing. But there is one part I would like to highlight, which was not mentioned, at least loudly, is the trauma that the parents who are waiting for the children are going through. That part needs to be taken care of. Those parents, and some of them are alone, waiting for information. They have contact with the authorities, but they have no psychological follow-up. They have no case manager. So we need to really focus on those people, because As a mother myself, if I don't feel happy, my children will not feel happy. If I feel depressed, they might see that's something wrong. So we want to give all the chance to those parents, those mothers, those fathers, those grandmothers who are looking for their children, to give them all the support they need in order to be strong enough and to start the second phase, which will be the support of those children. I think I'm trying to cover everything, but one more important point, I'm sorry if I'm long, but our organization is now working actively on building I don't want to say rehabilitation center, it's a center which is called Little Heroes Village in Volyn region. And in this institution we are working with other local authorities and institutions who will be providing all the help and need, especially for children with autism, disability, and who are returning from deportation with a really profound trauma. So we hope that in a few months we will be able to come back and to present you this village, because it's very important for us. It's a first step, but not the last one. Thank you.
Every time you hear some of these stories, it really, really resonates, doesn't it? It's really important to hear this, so thank you so much. We are being joined now remotely by Alexandra Matvichuk. And Alexandra, we've been hearing, just to let you know, from Olina Pekirinen. We've heard just a very, very emotive words there from Mariam and Thordis Gilftadordir. And we don't have much time, but just remind us, Alexandra, where you are and just tell us a little bit about the Centre of Civil Liberties.
Thank you very much for providing me the floor. It's an honor for me to address to the distinguished audience. I would like to base my speech on the previous explanations and summaries which Mariam did. I would like to draw the attention that deportation of Ukrainian children are not just war crimes. They are part of broader genocidal policy organized by Russia. Putin openly says there is no Ukrainian people, there is no Ukrainian language, there is no Ukrainian culture. For 11 years, Center for Civil Liberties and other partners have been documenting how these words converted in horrible practice. When the Russian military exterminate active local people on the ground, mayors, journalists, teachers, writers, priests, musicians, they ban Ukrainian language, they destroyed and rob Ukrainian cultural heritage, and they forcibly take Ukrainian children to Russia to put them in Russian education camps. They told them they are not Ukrainian, they are Russian children, and they will be adopted by Russian families who will bring them up as Russians. Based on this, I would like to make a link to another group of children, which I think also it's important to mention in the frame of our conference. I want to speak about children who live in occupied territories. We have approximately 1,006,000 children who live there under constant threat of deportation. We observe three trends which is going on there. First, it's forcible erosion of their identity. Children have to study according to Russian textbooks. In these textbooks, Ukraine doesn't exist as a state. The Ukrainian language is banned. And if Ukrainian content is found on your phone, a song, a text, a textbooks, the Russian security service immediately deal with it. Children under occupation quickly learn what not to say and not to do. They're afraid that their words could be dangerous. Some of them have witnessed the beating and arrest of their parents or acquaintances, or know about it from friends. The children whose families led the occupation told us, at first, you build a wall around yourself to hide behind, but over time, this wall begins to press on you. And I felt that I was simply vanishing. Parallel to this, Russia has developed a whole system of militarizing children under occupation, and this is a second trend. Armed Russian military personnel are regularly invited to schools to give lectures on patriotic educations. Children from the occupied territories are brought to sport and recreation camps, where they wear military uniforms, live in barracks conditions, and learn to use weapons. At the age of 14, Ukrainian children are forcibly given a passport of citizens of Russian Federation. After the age of 18, they are subject to compulsory military service in Russia. And third trend, which became visible for me only after when I started to speak with experts who provide rehabilitation for children who returned from deportation or from occupied territories, is the following. Russians is brought up our children in atmosphere of unquestionable obedience. They just ingrain authoritarian software in their mind to grow them in a way that they have never believed that their will has any matter, but will be confident that they have just to fulfill someone's orders. And this is not just situation that 1,600,000 Ukrainian children are suffered under Russian occupation. It's a threat for security because Russia is preparing for this generation of Ukrainian children a new generation of Putin soldiers. And it's very naive to think that Russia preparing a new generation of Putin soldiers just to fight with Ukraine. Last year, the international community celebrated the 35th anniversary of adoption of the UN Convention on the Right of the Child. The situation of Ukrainian children in deportation, in occupation, violates numerous provisions of this UN Convention, namely the right to preserve identity, including citizenship, the right to education, freedom from inhuman treatment, discrimination, freedom of expression, the right to family and family reunification, and the right to use one's own culture. For 11 years, we have been watching in dynamic how childhood passed in occupation. Our greatest enemy is time. Russia continues illegal occupation. Russia continues forcible deportations. Children lost their childhood. We lose these children. I want to end with a personal story. One of my friends is a journalist. She comes from a small town that is now occupied. In her former school, every morning now begins with the fact that Ukrainian children have to sign the Russian anthem. And one children never sing this song. And one day the teacher asked this child, why you don't sing the Russian national anthem? And the child responded, I don't know the words. What's the problem? Told teacher, go home and learn by heart. So next day, this teacher forced the child to stand in the front of the whole class and to sing Russian national anthem. And instead of Russian national anthem, this child started to sing Ukrainian national anthem. Why this story is important? Because it clearly shows that if our children continue to fight and have a strength to resist Russian occupation, Russian deportation, then we adults certainly have no rights to give up. We must find a way and save them. Thank you very much.
Alexander, thank you. And just to let you know, I think there are people, goosebumps in the room when you told us about that little child and the bravery of that child. Let's just appreciate what these kids are going through day in, day out. We know what is happening. We heard from Nathaniel Raymond how Russia is using a system which he described, a system of highly industrialized deportations. They've got plans, they're very organized, they know what they're doing. Tordis, you've just recently been to Ukraine, and in your new role, I know, 3 months in, so a lot to get your head around, but I just wonder, when it comes to the Council of Europe, you started by saying you want to be of use. Practically, what can you do? You've got organisations like Mariam's, you've got organisations like Nathaniel Raymond, Humanitarian Research Lab at Yale University, funding soon to be cut. This is a guy who describes himself as an epidemiology department facing off with Russian Secret Service. What can you do realistically? They need money. Is that something that you guys can do?
Thank you very much for, this is not on, but it has green light.
If you keep speaking, and then we'll know if we can hear you.
Okay. She said they can't translate if.
Yeah, and also on the online.
Press more a second time.
It's green. No, it's
perfect.
It's okay. Okay. Okay, good. Yes. So what can I do? I mean, the portfolio I have is broad because it's also around the children that live in member states and also the children that live in Ukraine. But I will focus on the stolen children or unlawfully abducted children. What we can do is, I just have to use this opportunity because Raymond is here. You know, they are tracking 35,000 children. And they already have a decision from the US that the funding is soon to be off. I have reached out in some way, what I can, to try to facilitate support. There seems to be a lack of, I don't know if it's a lack of mechanism or lack of efficiency, or people are just, you know, everyone is busy. But what I do know is that we have a lot of countries with all sorts of financial support. We all agree that this is of primary concern, and it's a priority not only for the Ukrainian people, which should be enough for us to listen to and then do it, but also for the international community as a whole. If Europe cannot stand up and find the amount that Yale needs to continue, sorry, Europe doesn't have any credibility to say that this is a priority. If we already have a system and a mechanism that is tracking 35,000 children, we cannot see that just drift away and then all of a sudden in September maybe say, hey, let's figure this out and start again, as he described very well why that's not possible. And also you would obviously just lose those children, at least many of them, so you can't really start again. I don't know, I don't really care who pays for it. I don't care if it's a couple of countries, European Union, different kind of funds. But if Europe can't find $5 million annually to track Ukrainian children, we really cannot speak with credibility that this is a priority of concern. And this is a priority of what we have to do. Because in my role, I am very much aware of the fact that it has its limits. I mean, it's not like we have a dialogue with the Russians. It's not like, I mean, Council of Europe, Russia isn't even part of the Council of Europe anymore. So with that part of my portfolio, it's about raising awareness, making connections, trying to support and facilitate what has to be facilitated and supported. My fact-finding mission in Ukraine, I mean, I met different kinds of ministries, organizations, NGOs, international organizations, and so forth. But I'm here to try to be useful. There is a need of a clear political will. Of course, there is a political will in overall, on paper, for many countries in real life and with actions. But there needs to be like a more organized manner to do what we can do. Number one is tracking. Number two is to push for mediation and negotiating to get those children back. Number three is trauma care for these children. And number four is accountability. If we don't have tracking, you can just forget about the other three things. And now when we have discussions on so-called peace negotiations, whatever that means, the accountability is always extremely important. We don't know how this will end. We don't know how many children will be brought back. But what we do know is that this is happening. It's happening in real life. They are alive. And the Russian Federation has to be held accountable. So if somebody here knows any politicians in any country in Europe or Canada or elsewhere, please reach out and push. Because like Nathaniel said before, it's a matter of weeks. And we can't see this just end. And then when it's fall, try to figure out ways to start again.
So but listen, that was really strong. And just before you turn your microphone off, so you think that the Yale route is the way to go. You need to keep that going. So who are you talking to behind the scenes in order to make sure that that funding stays?
I mean, there are, of course, a lot of work being done. I mean, the group of different NGOs inside Ukraine are doing a remarkable job. And, you know, Save Ukraine, I'm not going to mention that because then I forget someone. And there's also a cooperation there with other countries, with other projects, with different kind of technology, and it's all important. And if there's a will to not use Yale and to move it and to move the data and for someone else to do it, I'm not going to have a strong opinion on that. I just have a very strong opinion that those children have to be tracked, and that cannot stop. I'm not going to, you know, it's not for me to say how that's best done, but we also have to understand the political reality that when it's Yale and the weight that it has, both globally and in the United States of America, that also counts. Because this is an issue where if anything can be bipartisan, this is it. This is something that, you know, religion, environment can also agree on. Democrats and Republicans can agree on it. Every normal human being can understand how fundamentally wrong this is. So the cold political reality is that this part of the full war of aggression is something that is important to keep the support and the momentum. I mean, what I have done is basically just to try to make it happen. There are other people doing that as well. I truly hope that we can push. Everyone who can push will push for this to be solved before it's stopped.
Theodis, thank you very much, and sorry to kind of focus on you, but it's really good to kind of get that clarity. Let's have some questions from the audience. Who's got any? Any hands up? No, in that case, let me indulge myself, but please start thinking if you've got something. And I think it's pretty black and white, isn't it? You want to get the kids back, but it's just the way of doing it. Once they're back, Elina, when it comes to ENOC, the European Network of Ombudspersons for Children, Theodis mentioned there everybody working together. I wonder, with your organisation, how do you then coordinate the kind of care and developing common guidelines in order under which these kids will then be rehabilitated and reintegrated and just loved once again?
Well, Ukraine is an associate member of ENOC, so we have a very close collaboration with the Ukrainian ombudsperson as well and his office. And then again, I think it is really important that all the countries have an independent ombudspersons for children that can monitor the situation in each country and also give information on the topics that need to be changed. We can also learn from each other a lot so that we don't all create the wheel again and again. I think very often in Europe we do things quite slowly without really collaborating with each other. It would be very effective to also work cross-border in some issues if there are children with very severe trauma that nobody knows how to work with. So this is about it, but I must say that some of the ombudspersons like us in Finland don't have the legal right to intervene in any processes that involve individual children and families, and that makes it a little bit complicated to help individual Ukrainian children and families. But in some countries, they have the right to get involved. So collaboration and sharing information, I think, is the best way, and educating also. Not only the ombudspersons, but also the professionals and the decision makers in different countries.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the floor? Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, given the fact that just after the end of this conference we will meet as parliamentary network, which organized that, to think of the follow-up. Could I please ask the panelists if you were to leave us with one or two sentences of what the parliamentarians could do, knowing that in the room you have national parliamentarians from member states of the Council of Europe, from OSCE Parliamentary Assembly, so always national parliamentarians, national legislatures. What would you like them to bring back home, and what could we do as parliamentary network?
Yes, I think that will have to go to Mariam first, because you are on the ground with these children, you meet the families. What can these guys, what do they need to be doing? You've got their ear, this is great.
Thank you. At that level, actually, everyone should focus on one thing. It's to get the support of the US. Everyone. Because today, and maybe I'm wrong, of course, I'm just someone from civil society on the ground, but we believe that today the only state which could be able to press Russia and return the children are the United States. So if you all align on putting pressure and getting back with the US, I think that will be something which will be important. And last but not least is the alignment on sanction. When we implement sanction, I understand that some sanctions are applicable in the US, but not in the EU. Others are applicable in UK, but not in the EU. So it's an alignment when you have individuals, at least for the children topic, when you have someone who is sanctioned individuals, it's very important to align those sanctions in all countries. Because if they are not sanctioned in the UK, they always find a way around. So they are not very much sometimes touched by it. Thank you.
Let's bring Alexander in just to get that answer as well, because Alexander, you've got the ear, a room full of parliamentarians, politicians. Is it about getting the US on board? Is it about sanctions? What do you need them to do?
Recent weeks, we heard a lot about natural minerals, about Russia's territorial claims, about geopolitical interests, but we didn't hear about people. And this is a problem, that we lost human dimension in political process, how to stop Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. So my request to distinguished parliamentarians from different countries, we need your direct involvement to return human dimension in all political process. We have to find an answer to the very complex questions. What will be with these dozens of thousands illegally deported Ukrainian children to Russia? What will be with thousands and thousands illegally detained civilians, men and women, as well as prisoners of the war, subjected to horrible torture and sexual abuse daily? What will be with people under occupation in general? We speak about millions. Among them, as I mentioned during my speech, is 1,600,000 Ukrainian children. These people, their parents, they have no tools how to defend their rights, their freedom, their property, their children, their life, their beloved ones. So you know better how with using your political influence to make the world understand that without returning human dimension in all political process, without asking this complex question, particularly about deported children to Russia, we will never find a path to sustainable peace.
Alexander, thank you as always for bringing back that human dimension.
In addition to this, I think everyone should make a plan, a strategy of educating enough professionals to help these children, a strategy for housing of these children and their families, a strategy for educating these children, and also things like leisure, etc. We have a mental health crisis in Europe and globally when it comes to young people and children. So we lack therapists and professionals that are able to help children with war trauma. So please, this is a very, very practical plan, how to do it when they return.
practical and tangible. We've got a question from the floor. Yes, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Larissa Belazir. I'm a member of PACE and member of Ukrainian Parliament. I have not a question, but more appeal to the members of Parliament, to the members of PACE from 46 countries, to the Secretary General, Madam Despina of PACE. Actually, today we witnessed that Ukraine's children are not merely victims of war; they are being made into targets and tools of war. And I agree with Gitfadar Dir that our response must be very united and very strategic. Justice must reach not only generals and politicians and Putin as the tribunal will be established, but also those who train, who indoctrinate, adopt stolen children. And actually we have already in our 2 resolutions the idea of making the sanction list of these people. And we have to make it real. Actually it is in this, and it is already adopted. And I think it's this thing that we heard today, that the evil of the axis of evil industrialized this abduction of children, and we still cannot even acknowledge that this indoctrination and militarization is a crime of war, it's a crime of genocide. So it's a simple thing that we have to do. Olena Khomenko already said Ukraine has the list of these people. Make the list of these people that illegally abducting and adopting our children. So it's doable, and we can already start with this, and Mariam also was telling about this. This is not easy, but it's doable, because the Committee of Ministers made a reply to the parliamentarians that they don't have seen in this value added. So we have to change this together and to start with the concrete measures. And one more issue I wanted to come back is also appeal to the parliamentarians and members of Council of Europe. We have also in this resolution on children, in 2 resolutions, I think it's in Pavlo Pisco resolution, it is written that Assembly emphasizes that Ukrainian children leave Ukraine because of the armed aggression of the Russian Federation, not they are running from the political regime. So, but still in some countries the Article 6 of Hague Convention is used, and they are taken from the courts of these countries take children from their parents. For example, I give one example, that mother was deprived of the rights in Germany because she has beaten the child, Ukrainian mother. Okay, but this child has a father in Ukraine, and he has the decision of the court that he is the guardian, but still he has no rights in Germany because Germany doesn't take into the consideration the decision of the court, because they use the 6th article of the Hague Convention, reckoning our children refugees. So it's easy to make, it is in the resolution, and we have to take it under control, because some countries of Council of Europe have taken it into consideration and are listening to the courts from Ukraine and from the jurisdiction of Ukraine has power over these children, and that the children, they have the relatives and they cannot be adopted or taken without taking into consideration the situation of their guarantors or their parents. So please, these 2 points of the resolution on the situation of children, we can already fulfill and be more concrete and actually more act than say or adopt. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on that? Yeah.
Just because of the question from Despina, I mean, I would say that the political push is needed, and I very much agree with the point on the human dimension. And we have, and I agree, we've seen in the news, other parts the last couple of weeks. If we could all agree and align in the messaging and the strategy that this part of the war of aggression is somehow not drifting away, but still it's not like highest on the list of what has to be solved when people talk about, ceasefire or not, and then in the aftermath, after ceasefire, we talk about peace negotiations. I mean, I wish there wasn't a need for political push for the obvious, but obviously there is a need for a political push for the obvious, that this part of what is happening has to be on the table no matter who's talking and how this will continue. And I think this has to be very clear from all member states within the Council of Europe. And then just my final point on I mean, the task to receive child or children that have been returned is huge. It differs, of course, between children, but it's huge. The longer time they are away, the bigger the task gets. And I agree with what you said, because this is also what I heard very clearly from the Ukrainians. I mean, they are also in desperate need of human resources. They would need to threefold the numbers of social workers and psychologists. And there, the pace and whoever who is working in politics, we need to be creative here. We need to find some ways how we can increase the numbers so that they are able to do that. And it's also costly. And again, when member states are funding and supporting Ukraine with rebuilding and reconstruction, this has to be a part of that. It's costly to get them back, and it has to be done properly, both on the trauma side, but also just on children that do not have a guardian. Where do they live? You need an apartment. I mean, it's expensive, and Ukrainians can't do that by themselves.
And I just wonder, what kind of provisions, yeah, absolutely, what kind of provisions are being made for the protection of those kids who are possibly, in the occupied territories? Of course, it's incredibly difficult, but if that push by Putin increases, if he takes more land, is anything being done to protect the kids that are at the moment safe, arguably, if you can be safe in a country at war? Yeah, go on.
There was one question before this panel about what can be done. And I think that's an important point which we don't realize. It's mandatory evacuation, which the Ukrainian authorities are doing amazingly. But if they don't have this green corridor, if the Russian Federation doesn't give them access to the UNICEF, to the ICRC, there's no point, there's no possibility to evacuate. Because what people need to understand, a deportation is taking place when Russians are coming and invade a city. And when they enter a city, they just start with a deportation. That's the first thing. So preventive measures is evacuation, but not just on the Ukrainian side. They need really to make sure that the Russians are giving access, making this humanitarian corridor accessible for international organizations, for the Ukrainian authorities, in order to evacuate as soon as possible.
It's a really good point, isn't it? And it's that kind of the preventative measures. Any questions from the floor? Everybody's gone very, very shy, haven't they? Earlier on, we heard from one of our panelists who was saying that conversations with the Russian side were not really happening. Well, I've forgotten who it was, but I wonder, Thordis, is that, obviously, Russia's not part of the Council of Europe, but is that, the OSCE, is that something that you guys are reaching out? Are there any, I don't know, sympathetic ears there? Is that even possible?
I think probably the main opportunities there are through, is through third countries. I mean, we have, for example, Qatar, that has interfered and taken a role as a mediator, and kids have been brought back through that. We have other countries as well, and I know that from the Ukrainian side there is an outreach to hopefully get more countries to do so. And I want to mention here the Vatican, because they have been, open to it, and they've been in this group of willing. And now, and again, this is also something bipartisan in the US. You even have, bishops that endorsed Trump, that is very vocal on the fact that this is fundamentally wrong. Now we have a new pope that is very vocal on this issue, and not only after he became a pope, but also before, and a symbolic and strong message that his first meeting was with Zelensky, President Zelensky. So I think, and there, the Council of Europe does not have a direct part in that. And depending on how things develop on ceasefire, peace negotiations, so-called peace negotiations, I don't know how that will evolve, but I would think that it's mostly through third countries that could happen. And of course, it would be it would make a lot of difference if the US could, really have this as a priority and an obvious thing that has to be taken into account.
We heard earlier from Baroness Helena Kennedy, and she was talking about the issue of the kids becoming part of the negotiations. Is that something that you'd want to see then, Thordis?
That issue will be a part of negotiations?
Yeah.
For peace negotiations, you mean?
To bring them back, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that is essential, that if we talk about peace negotiations and we focus on the fact that peace has to be sustainable and it has to be just, this is a crucial point in that regard. And I don't see how you can negotiate about peace and leave out the fact that, it's not 90,500. I mean, the number is higher, that we would just not have that as a part of the negotiations.
Okay, and then yes.
Russia has not been a member or associate member of ENOC since 2014. But I think that we should use the organizations or institutions that Russia is involved with, like the OSCE, PA, and also I think that UN should be more active on this issue. I mean, I haven't heard too much from there, sorry to say.
That's a really interesting point, actually. Anybody from the floor? Because I don't want to hog the microphone. Yes,
I wanted to just factually correct, but Elena did, to say that Russia is a member of the OSCE, and this is why, indeed, as she said, they could do something. It is.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
As it is member, as you said, precisely of the UN. This is what I want.
Only the Council of Europe expelled them. Thank you very much. Yes, Marion.
Can I just add?
ENOC expelled them too.
If I may, it's good to give proposal with organizations who have Russian members, but today, as Daria Zarivna mentioned, it's a good example. There was supposed to be a meeting between two presidents, between the President Zelensky and President Putin. The Ukrainians keep telling us, you can't trust them. They will never agree on anything. That's the proof today that you can't rely on them. Anything they will say, you should never take anything for granted. And that's today, it's an extremely good example.
Yeah, it really is. And you see the diplomacy in the background, and arguably what you see happening in reality is really disappointing, shall we put it like that. Anybody from the floor have a question? Yes, please, madam. Press until it goes red, or just shout at us. I'm sure we'll pick you up. It's all right. Somebody's going to come and help you just to turn it on. But yeah, if you could just say who you are as well.
Yes, thank you. I just have something, maybe comment, because maybe I'm the one who represents some Russians here, because I'm Russian actually. I've been living here for 27 years, and I founded the Democratic Community of Russian Speakers in Finland that is on the Kremlin's unwanted list and so on. It's just I'm the enemy for Kremlin, but we also participate in all these kind of things, and we're trying to help actually, because we have some connections inside Russia. We have, because all this campaign, for example, that with Center for Civil Liberties with Alexander Matvichuk. They have this People First campaign that we actually participate in also in it, and with Memorial, that is a human rights organization inside Russia. And over there, and for our colleagues from other human rights organizations, they are trying to help also, because those people that are inside that, because we outside Russia, we cannot do actually anything, nothing here, and but children are inside Russia. Prisoners of war also inside Russia, they are tortured every single day over there, and civilian prisoners are also, it's 700 at least. Alexandra said about this, and we were talking about this in Parliament in February, actually, about this case. And but some people, advocates, and some journalists, and some our colleagues inside Russia, they are trying to help. They trying to be not public, at least, and they are trying to find these people, and they communicate with Ukrainian, and we communicate all the time. We have also some conferences. Just a month ago, we were in Brussels, and 300 participants, and Council of Europe, Parliament, and participants from the ministries of different countries were also there, and some people from Russia, they were also there, and our colleagues from different countries. So we try to keep this communication and to find, because some people continue this work, and they are risking their lives actually over there. So this is also this kind of cooperation and possibility, and it's a possibility to minimize these consecutions also inside with these people and with children and other prisoners. So it's prisoners are also there, another subject that maybe have to be discussed so widely also maybe another time.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very good of you to put that perspective on. We are out of time. Can I just say thank you to our esteemed panel. Elena, thank you so much. Mariam Thordis, thank you so much. And also our thanks to Alexandra, who has now had to leave us. But thank you for your questions as well. And again, to the organisers for bringing us all here together on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was really good. Well done.